Good evening, all. Good evening, or good day if you're not tuning in from the UK. It's 9:30 over here, so it's a bit of a late start for us. If you're not tuning in from the UK or the US, let me know where you're tuning in from. Because we normally just have. Well, I'm always take for granted that most of my listeners and subscribers are tuning in from one of those two places. But if you're somewhere else today, let me know. Welcome everybody to the stream. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Should be loud and clear. I'm going to do what I always do what I absolutely always do, and just ask you to let me know in the feed that I'm okay in terms of audible. You can hear me, it's nice, it's loud, it's clear, and I'm good to kind of proceed. So yeah, let me know. We got someone tuning in from the Netherlands. Big up Patricia Martin Silva. Lots of love to my American guys. But I'm not gonna read out all of you. Well, I might as well. E.G. Butler from Philadelphia, Aaron Hunt from Baltimore. Welcome all. Indigenous brother from Sweden. Hey, how's it going? Very nice to have you here. King, please one day a video on the Black Ancient of Oceania Pacific. They have a rich history. Yeah, I'm sure they do. I admittedly am not well schooled in the area, but I certainly am not opposed to learning more. So yeah, that would be fantastic. Very good idea. Shout out to my olive skin Mediterranean brother. Good job on the last live stream. Thank you. Kelnari, well, I have to read you out now. You're going to say I'm in the US, but you've just given me a $10 donation. So thank you very much, my brother. Said I'm in the US and actually on time for class today. Well, it's a pleasure to have you. And yeah, it's a pleasure to have you in class. We had a fantastic live stream. This is part 2, by the way, if you're just joining us and you didn't catch part 1. We had a part 1 to this. So the truth about the Moors of Europe, part 1. Was, I think we had a really good time. That was a 2-hour stream as well. It's not too long, so if you haven't watched that, I advise you to watch it back. It doesn't make for very difficult watching, I don't think. It's quite a lot that we learned from there, and I think we had a really good time. That was an amazing stream, and that's probably testament to what a fantastic community you guys are, because like I said, I'll say it again, I don't mind. I was very apprehensive about this topic. Ironically, I was going through my content today, and this was actually the very first topic that I posted on YouTube. So when it came to my YouTube channel, I started off here, and then I kind of shifted over to ancient Kemet, which is where I obviously had quite a large knowledge base. And I started in Europe, but I wanted to do more reading and purchase more books and to build my knowledge base in Europe before I touch the topic again. But I'm going to show you that first video, which isn't perfect, but I'm going to show you it. It's just a short, and I'm going to share it with all of you guys. So we'll watch that as part of today's stream, so you can kind of see where we're heading. And the good thing is that the short is about whitewashing, and I think that's a topic we're going to touch on today. So I think there's going to be themes that come out today. We're definitely going to touch on the topic of whitewashing in Europe, particularly European artwork. We're going to talk about convoluting and obfuscating black presence by using certain characters in a recurring way to explain away things that are uncomfortable. And yeah, it's gonna just be a very good, and I hope informative live stream that we do today. So yeah, thank you for the donation, and thank you HH. By the way, have you posted again? Because I got a donation from HH literally as soon as I posted this live, and I've asked you to, oh, here we go, he has put it there. Because I was just shouting out Yaya Shabaka Fula. He does this in-depth on YT, great scholar. Hey everyone. So there you go, that's a shout out from HH, and he did give me I think it was a $5 or £5 donation before the stream even started. So yeah, I very much appreciate that, and I appreciate everyone for joining. So yeah, that's where we are. And I don't think there's a huge amount of pretense. I just wanted to do a little bit of small talk while people kind of feed in. We've got just over 100 now. We managed just to sustain around 400 on the live stream, and that was pretty much for the entirety of the stream, so that was amazing. So clearly this is a topic that a lot of people have appreciation and hunger to hear about. So yeah. And I mean, RJ Mackenzie just said, I'm glad you're covering this. I've been doing some research. I mean, yeah, I've been doing research on this topic for a long time. So yeah, I'm just going to give you a little bit. So, all right, I want to get started now. So I think, like I mentioned before, one of the, this was the first topic that I started on when I actually launched my channel. And I did a short that I'm going to share with you guys now. And it's going to kind of touch on the topic of whitewashing, which I feel is really, really important for us to touch on, because whitewashing is one of the most effective tools that was used to essentially change reality, to change our past, to change our perspective on things. And I think one of the most effective things that have been done throughout, I'd say, global history, where, I mean, we certainly see it taking place in ancient Kemet right now, but one of the most effective things that's done in global history is basically the understanding, and this is where kind of you have to take your hat off to Europeans, and when I say that, I mean like Indo-Europeans. You have to kind of take your hat off to them, because one of the things they've been very resolute about and very consistent with is the understanding that, just like Napoleon said, what is history but a fable agreed upon? They understand that reality is whatever you tell people it is. So if you can control the narrative, if you can control what people see and what people consume, then that becomes truth. That's ultimately it. And they realized, well, if we're going to, have a lasting impact and a lasting rule, then we're going to have to change the imagery. Now, actually, before I start and I show you this short, I do want to share you a very brief story piece of knowledge that I was given by a friend of mine. Like I've told you guys, I come from an educational background, and a good friend of mine was a history teacher, whose name I'll keep to myself. But we taught together in the Middle East, and he was English. And even back then, I was really, so this was like, we're talking about over 10 years ago now. Long time ago. And even back then, he knew I was massive into history, because I had my massive book collection that I took along with me and used to talk about it. I was always kind of passionate and always used to raise it. And he came to me and he said, "Oh, I know that you're a massive history buff. I've got one for you. You're gonna love this." I said, "Okay, cool. What is it? What's this piece of history?" I'm rubbing my hands in and goes, "Did you know we have no idea what the ancient Romans look like?" And I looked at him and I was like, "What are you talking about, mate?" We know exactly what the ancient Romans look like. And obviously I gave him the spiel like we normally do. I've seen statues of Julius Caesar and this, that, and the other. He said, "Oh, well, don't be fooled by that. Most of that's from the Holy Roman Empire, which is the Catholic Empire. It's got nothing to do with ancient Rome." And he said, "Second, all of the ancient Roman artifacts that we do have, a majority of them," this is his words, "a majority of them, vast majority, have been recarved." And I said, "By who?" And he said, "The Vandals." He said, "Where do you think we get the word vandalism from?" He said, "The Vandals were given the name the Vandals because they vandalized artworks, where we get the actual practice from. So the actual words vandalism and defacing have the same root. Defacing means to remove or to change the face. Vandalism means to basically not just destroy something, but to change something. So what they would do, rather than when they invaded a society, just like we saw with the tapestry of the wild men and the Moors." So I'm going to pull that up really quickly. I know we've seen it already, but may as well have some visuals to go with what we're talking about today. Okay. So just like we see with the tapestry of the wild men and the Moors, one of the practices of the Vandals was not to destroy everything, but actually to keep it and to just deface it. So to change statues into their likeness. So after these guys finished getting these guys out of their castle, they wouldn't destroy the castle, they'd keep the castle. Okay, and they'd move right in, but they would start to deface, they would change images into their likeness. And he said, this is where we get the word vandalism from. And he said, this is one of the reasons why we don't know what the ancient Romans look like. And then he said to me, we've got a good idea what they look like, but we keep that between ourselves as historians. And then he kind of left it at that. And I knew what he was getting at. I was like, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to, what are you trying to do here? Now, obviously, if you don't know, actually, that just brings me on to another thing. If you don't know what I'm getting at here, let me just give you a piece of knowledge that you'll probably be aware of, but I'll share it with you. I'm sure a few of you will be aware of this already. Let me show you what the Romans that settled York looked like. So York, we know the Romans first landed in York. Okay, so this is what the Romans that settled York looked like. So this is their leader. She's got the name, it was a she, by the way. She's got the name, the Ivory Bangle Lady. She was the person that was in charge of the first Romans that settled in York. And this is what she looked like according to historians. Okay, so you can see her there. Let me just quickly see a picture so you can all see it. This is the Ivory Bangle Lady. This is her skull, and this was a Roman. Now obviously the explanation that they give is that, oh, you know, the Roman Empire, she was probably someone that was from Africa and convert, blah blah, this, that and the other, you know, the kind of explanations they come from. But so they'll say anything other than the fact, because they've reconstructed her and she's come out as a black woman, they're going to have to find a reason why she was black. They can't just essentially say this is a black female Roman, because that contradicts what we've been taught. So when I saw this and I learned of the Ivory Bangle Lady, obviously my head went back to what I was taught by my historian friend, who told me we don't know what the Romans look like. Now, am I sitting here suggesting that all of the Romans were black? That's not the point that I'm making. My mindset actually is that if you go in, the further you go, well, if you go into recent antiquity, you have most places were multicultural already. So this whole idea that multiculturalism is a new thing is actually false. Before racism, multiculturalism, particularly across Europe, was the norm. So multiculturalism across Europe was absolutely the norm. And what's happened is since the 18th and 19th century is the world has become more separated. We've been separated into these arbitrary groups based on quote unquote race. And it's completely changed the fabric of the world. And people have been grouped together, which is why you have these groups that have very diverse genetic signatures and genetic information, like the blacks in America, for instance, which is why I'm doing my whole DNA thing at the moment. Not to, by the way, that's not to kind of like co-sign DNA. That's just so we can get an understanding of how vast and how broad different signatures are from people, and understand why they're that broad, because they're getting DNA from lots of various places. So anyway, I'm kind of off on one now. So I'm going to quickly show you my first video, because I think that'll actually be quite interesting for us to look at. Okay. Yeah, Macy's just said she was swarthy. It's like, yeah, she definitely was swarthy. This is what swarthy looks like. And oh, by the way as well, I know this is just a reconstruction, so it's not to be taken too serious in terms of like, it's a reconstruction, but look at the hair. I want you to just quickly take a note of the hair, because when we look at a few paintings and stuff today, that topic of hair is going to become very relevant. Okay, very relevant. So anyway, let me play you my first short. Now, have I changed my mind on a few of these things? I don't know. Let me play it for you first of all, and then we'll go from there, because I want you all guys to all see where this kind of started for me on YouTube. So from the, I'm gonna kind of pause it along the way as well, because otherwise I'm gonna get punished by YouTube. Oh dear. So I'm gonna pause it kind of on the way so it doesn't play the music, which is copyrighted too much. Okay. From the 18th to the 20th century, Europe began a systematic erasure of black and mixed monarchs through whitewashing of artwork. So by the way, I've got some footage of Bridgerton in the background, and this show was, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I'll be honest with you, this show hit me hard when I first saw it. I'm not gonna lie, people will be like, what's wrong with you, you mad? But because of this topic, it hit me hard, because I was like, why does this not look weird? Why does that hair look more normal on her than it does on other people and that's because, we all know the answer to that question is because that's natural African hair. So then the question mark was, okay, so why did all of the monarchs, or at least a load of them, have naturally African hair? Why is that? It's just a big question mark you have to ask, so we'll get there. Do you see how natural the hair looks? Sorry, I just have to keep pausing it, you know. Queen Charlotte, look at the hair. We're going to get into Queen Charlotte in a bit. So these are our actual portraits. And this image here, just to be clear, guys, is what's on the Royals website. Okay? The Royals website. So if you go to the royals.org, that's the official government, or the official monarchic website in the UK. Look what they've done to her hair. They have effectively changed the actual real portraits and posted this on the actual website. So the question is, what are they trying to hide there? Why would they change it? I mean, if it's not offensive and you're happy with the way she's painted, just post her actual paintings. Why would you post this? That's a very bizarre move. Lorenzo de Medici, you saw what he looked like there, yeah? You see what he looks like here. And by the way, like I said, I'm not posting or suggesting that these people were all black. Some of them, I think they're, by this stage in history, many people had become mixed, mulatto. By the way, we'll get into that word mulatto because it's got nothing to do with the word mule. By the way, I know a lot of people are thinking that, and they're thinking, don't use that word. But it's like, no, it's got nothing to do with the word mule, and we're going to break that down a bit later. But I think a lot of them have become this kind of like long-term mixed. If you go to countries like Angola, for instance, I'm just going to highlight this, countries like Angola, and even to a lesser extent Brazil, a lot of people think that the Angolans look a certain way because they're, you know, the native Africans mixed with Portuguese. But a lot of Angolans, particularly like the light-skinned ones, the ones that look, are literally Portuguese. They're Portuguese who are repatriated in Angola, and so that's the reason they look like this. So anyway, let me let it play. This is what you'll see now if you search for him. Completely different. Think about the first image that I showed you and look at this one. Completely different. Why would you have one of them where they look black or mixed race and then the next one where they look completely white? Now this one is the one that really blew my mind. Okay, this is Queen Elizabeth I, and this is an X-ray. Now, I know a lot of you are going to be thinking straight away, Queen Elizabeth I wasn't black. In fact, I'm going to give you, it's funny, when I posted this video, not when I posted, actually quite recently, I'd say about 4 or 5 months ago, someone messaged me or commented on this video and they said, brother, and it was someone who was being nice, but they said to me, brother, you need to take this video down. It's undermining the good research that you do. I'm putting the voice on because that's the voice I heard in my head, so please, like, forgive me, but that's the voice I heard in my head because that's kind of how it was written. Like, you need to take this down, brother. And I was like, I'm not going to take it down. Okay, I'm not going to take it down. I appreciate the feedback, and I know it's coming from a good place. I know it's coming from an honest place, but I'm not going to take it down because sometimes truth is uncomfortable, and sometimes we're going to hear things that don't make any sense, but it doesn't make them less true. You know, it just doesn't make them less true. So I'm fully aware of the implications of me saying that Queen Elizabeth was black. I'm fully aware of the implications. Okay, the implications are, most of you will know about the edict that she never actually, I think, got enacted, but that she had an edict to remove the blackamoors and the Negroes from the UK. So this was, in many ways, one of the first moves towards segregating and getting rid of the black population in the UK. So they wanted to basically exile all of the blackamoors, those are the black Europeans, and the Negroes, those are the Africans. So bear in mind, that's two separate terms. Negroes are from Negroland. Negroland is the modern day Sahel. Blackamoors were from Europe. So Moors, blackamoors and Negroes, it said that. There's a reason it said both. If Moors and Negroes were just one thing, it would have just said export the Negroes or export the Moors, but it separated them because they understood we have black people from Europe and we have black people from Africa. So they separated that in this edict. Okay, so I understand the implications of that, and I'm not a person who historically am a fan of Queen Elizabeth I. However, when I saw this, which is an X-ray of a painting, and I might go into this, I might not go into this in massive detail, to be honest with you, because it's kind of away from the subject of the video. But when I saw this, I know what I'm looking at there. That to me is the face of a black woman. And it made sense to me as to why. First of all, she kind of has this afro hair. The features, the lips are fuller. Okay, it just structurally, someone who deals with portraits all day, that just easily is the portrait of a black woman. Easily. So I saw this and I was like, what the? My friend said, I was like, and there is two portraits here, so there's another face there, but ignore the second face because they're both the same black woman. But just look at this one over here. You can see that is just the face of a black woman, the shading. And actually, just to give you kind of a comparative example, so you know this is just not effect of the X-ray, because a lot of you were looking at it and say, oh, it's just an effect of the X-ray. That's all it is. It's just effect of the X-ray. Okay, let's have a look at other portraits that were X-rayed of Queen Elizabeth. In fact, I've got them saved here. Bear with me. I'll pull them up on the screen because I want you to know that ain't going crazy here. So here's another one that was X-rayed. So I'm just gonna quickly put it on the screen. So this is another portrait that was X-rayed. So here's the portrait. There's an X-ray scan, and here's a secondary X-ray scan. Now, both of these, I am satisfied to say I know what I'm looking at. Neither of these to me looks like a black woman. Okay, that's what I would expect to see from an X-rayed scan of a photo or of a painting. Now, when you take this image, when you take this image, which I'll zoom in on here, yeah, is that the right one? No, this is not the right one. Sorry, where is it? That's the one we just looked at. I'm trying to find the original. Let me just find it on the website. So when you take this image, okay, this image here, which clearly is obviously a white person, and then underneath it, this is the image that's lying. So let me just show you quickly a zoom in of that, and you end up with this image. Don't tell me that that's got anything to do with the X-ray. Okay, the features are different. The nose has got, everything's got more detail. The nose has got more detail. The lips have got more detail. The hair is just, this is just clearly a black woman. Now, if that's not enough for you, by the way, just to be clear, because I know some of you are going to be skeptical, and rightly so, absolutely question me, say, it doesn't make sense, King, what you're saying. It's kind of, yeah, you got, okay, she looks a little bit black in the portrait. What does that mean? Let's have a look. Let's have a quick read through of a description of Queen Elizabeth. So, because I want you to guys to get the full picture here, because rightly so, I could be going crazy. So just bear with me. Okay. I'm just going to pull up a quote for you. And by the way, this is all, if you search for descriptions of Queen Elizabeth I, they all say the same thing. So she's got even a modern biography that was done, and it's going to say the same thing as I'm about to read to you. So I think, you know, I think you can kind of guess where we're going to go from here, but let me read it to you. So, sorry, bear with me. All right, so this quote here is from Venetian ambassador Giovanni Michele, 1557. Okay, hope you're paying attention. Her face is comely rather than handsome, but she is tall and well formed, with good skin, though swarthy, she has fine eyes. Though swarthy, she has fine eyes. I'm going to give you another quote about her appearance. Tall and slender with a tiny waist, small bosom and beautiful, long-fingered hands, which it pleased her vanity to display to advantage in a variety of affected poses. She had a swarthy complexion like that of her mother. By the way, her mother was Anne Boleyn. Yeah, her mum was Anne Boleyn. And this quote says not only was she swarthy, her mum was swarthy. Now, just to be clear, so we're not on a different wavelength here. Does that woman look swarthy to you? I mean, pick a painting. Pick any one, please. Because for those of you who are saying that I'm crazy, contemporary quotes of Queen Elizabeth I have described her as swarthy. And even the recent biography of Queen Elizabeth I by, I'm trying to remember what her name was. But even recent descriptions of Queen Elizabeth I have all described her as swarthy. Now, I'd be fine with that if, you know, her portraits looked even a bit dark, but this woman is the opposite of swarthy. Okay? So, when you wonder what I mean when I say the whitewashing of history, okay, that's what I'm talking about. How can swarthy become this? Okay, we all know what swarthy means. We've covered it ad nauseum. Okay, those of you who need a lesson, if you weren't here on the last live stream we did, let me just quickly pull up the quote so you know what swarthy means, because you know it's good to educate yourself. So this is an 1827 dictionary that I like to quote from. So just a little reminder. Swarthy, dark of complexion, black, dusky, tawny. Set me where on some pathless plain the swarthy Africans complain. Through in the torrid climates the common colour is black or swarthy, yet the natural colour of the temperate climates is more transparent and beautiful. Here swarthy Charles appears, another black monarch, and there his brother with dejected air. Okay, their swarthy hosts would darken all our plains. So there's no middle ground in regards to what swarthy means. And we have two quotes, not one, because one person could have got it wrong. I'm being a bit exaggerating, but we got two, actually several quotes describing Queen Elizabeth as tall, slender, long hands, small waist, swarthy complexion. Okay, so yeah, I'll let you take that with you. All right, and yeah, we'll leave that there, and I'm going to now get into the video. Oh no, I've got to go back and finish watching. Sorry, didn't get to the end there. So yeah. So there you go. You saw that's the painting that they altered. By the way, another thing I didn't mention is that she's holding a cobra. She's holding a snake in her hand. Now, those of you schooled on ancient Egyptian, kind of like I want to say theology, but I want to kind of say spiritualism. The cobra represents the female goddess in ancient Egypt. So they painted over the cobra and they just put something else in her hand as well. So it's not even like the X-ray was the same. They altered certain parts of the X-ray. So those of you thinking, oh, it's just the same painting, it's not. They've changed certain parts of it as well. So it's absolutely been altered. That's a 100% fact. Okay. And someone just said swart, just like swart, which means black in Dutch. Absolutely. Swart Pete, which people were mentioning in the last live stream. We know what he looks like. If you don't know, you can Google Swart Pete. Okay, that's a nice thing that they do in, I think it's is it Dutch? Yeah. Where they, not racist at all. Yeah, so there you go. Anyway, let me move on. So that last one there is King Louis XIV. Now let me just actually also give you a little bit to mull over on that as well. So I think is this one here? Yeah. Who's heard about this woman here, Louise Mary Therese, the Black Nun of Moret? Who's heard of her? Let me know if you've heard of her. So this woman here, this Black Nun of Moret, is said to be the daughter of King Louis XIV. Okay, that last reconstruction that I just showed up on the screen. This is said to be his daughter. Now, why is that relevant to what we're discussing? Because what you'll notice, there was rumors going around, and the problem was that she was fully black. Okay, as you can see here. Okay, now we know for a fact that jet black people like this cannot be born of even a single white parent. It's literally an impossibility. Okay, it's a genetic impossibility because of the recessive nature. Okay, so it's a genetic impossibility for white parents to birth a black child. We know that. We know it's not impossible the other way around. But this woman was clearly fully black. Okay, nothing to do with mixed race here. This is a fully black woman. So that tells you either King Louis XIV was black or his wife was black. So forgetting the whole story around, did King Louis XIV have an affair with a black woman, or was this child actually the child of his wife who had an affair? Both of those are thrown around. The issue is whether they had the child together or this child was the result of King Louis XIV's affair. That means either he was black or his wife was black, because this child is black, not mixed race. I think we can all agree that. So one of those monarchs, either the king or queen, was clearly black. Now, you're not going to find this. If you look at pictures of King Louis XIV and his wife, they are both lily white. So why, if they were both white, why would this rumor even persist? Why would it persist? People would be like, what are you talking about? Don't be stupid. And actually, this woman was very outspoken. This nun, even though she was a nun, she was quite outspoken. She used to say, I am the daughter of the king. Now, if black people were in that kind of position in society, and it was so bizarre for a black person to, she would have had her mouth shut, because she would have been at risk of being beheaded. Yet she wasn't beheaded. Okay, she wasn't beheaded. She wasn't pursued. She wasn't anything. She wasn't silenced. It was accepted. A lot of people believed, yeah, cool, all right, she's probably the king's daughter. That's what most people believed. So yeah, let's read a little bit. Actually, the above portrait, dated 1695, is displayed in the library of Saint Genevieve, Latin Quarter of Paris. An unsigned portrait titled Louise Mary Therese, the Black Nun of Moret, cloistered all her life. By the way, this is contemporaneous with her, so this isn't some portrait that was made later. This portrait would have been made literally at the date when she would have been 31, so it looks about accurate for a melanated 31-year-old. Let's read. On November 16th, 1664, Mary Teresa of Spain, wife of Louis XIV of France, the Sun King is probably a good clue as to you know, yeah, come on guys, gave birth to a daughter named Mary Anne de France in public in the Louvre, 1 month prematurely. Laughter is said to have greeted her birth. She was the third child and second daughter of Mary Teresa of Spain. The child was born black. Rumours ran wild in the court. Now, the issue is, why was it such a massive deal that the child was born black? My personal perspective is that, and because by the way, it says in the story it was born of Maria, but when later stories came out, the issue, they said it wasn't her, it was Louis's daughter, but I'm not sure. But the issue around her blackness, I believe, would have been around her complexion, not around the fact that she was of the black race. It would have been around her complexion, because let's say Louis looked like the portrait of an unnamed man, which I believe is Louis XIV, which I showed in this short. Can I rewind that? No, I can't. Oh, darn it. I want to show that portrait again, but that's more of a light-skinned black man, which is absolutely fine. Okay, so I think the issue would have been around the complexion of the child being very dark. Okay, so the child said to have been born black as ink from head to toe. Okay, born black as ink from head to toe. So that certainly would have got your attention. So the point being, I could read through all this, but it's kind of like a side story. I just want to touch on this issue of whitewashing, because once again, if we just do a quick search for Mary Teresa of Spain, quick search for Mary Teresa of Spain. I mean, you don't get whiter than that, do you? And let's have a look on King Louis the 14th. Oh, that's his fourth, sorry. Yeah, so there's no way, guys, you'll agree with me, there's no way that the Sun King over here and the Sun Queen over here are giving birth to this melanated child. Yeah, I think people would have just said, listen, you crackhead, stop saying you're the king's daughter before it'll be off with your crackhead. That's what they would have said. Yeah. So yeah, I think we could all agree that there's something going on in terms of how these people are being portrayed. Okay, so that was that. We got a lot to cover today, and I think I've done, how long have I done? I've done 40 minutes of preempted. So let's now get into the video. So we're on part 2 of this fantastic video of Capri, or this fantastic series I should say, of Capruckies. We did part 1, they were called the Moors. They were called the Moors part 2. And yeah, I don't think there's too much more to preface. So I think we're all ready to get into it. In fact, I don't even know why I was bothering with all of that copyright playing thing, because Caprucki's videos already got me copyrighted on the first one, so it doesn't matter too much. I'll just get into it. All right, so let's go. Oh,
Popular Western Academia.
One split second. Holly, thank you so much for your donation. I ain't gonna miss them again. I did that last live stream. $9.99. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you. Thank you very much. All right, let's get into it.
In the rare instances that they do dare to broach the subject at all, often preferring to ignore the evidence entirely, have proposed theories. But before we examine those, it's fundamental that we come to recognise a theoretical term known as presentism. A theory that
now, before we get into that, I'm going to quickly jump back here, because this is a really important point that I wanted to cover. Oh, is my volume low again? Really? I've got it peaking here. So let me know if my volume is low for you guys. I've just read a comment, but it could be wrong. But let me know. But I wanted to touch on a point here, because someone did reach out to me and said, or just left a comment, and they said, those coats of arms show the images of their vanquished foes, and I actually think they're disgusting because the people on them are clearly dead with that. That's not true at all. Okay, the people have their eyes open. Okay, they often are crowned. They look like they're kind of in quite glorious positions, but the point that they were making is one of the excuses that you'll hear. And I'm not saying that they were doing that. They could have been doing it in total ignorance. But if you look at the coats of arms, actually none of them have their eyes closed. They all have their eyes open. These are clearly either the actual founders of the families or the patron saints that are linked to the families. This is how the families want to be perceived. Absolutely. And the reason I raised that point, because this is something quite important that I want to touch on with you guys.
At all.
Whoops,
Often-
let me pause that. We're going to come back to this in a second. Don't worry, I will let it play in a bit, but there was one thing that I just really, really wanted to cover with you guys. So, I mentioned the flag of Corsica in the last live stream, and I don't know if you guys remember that, but I mentioned the flag of Corsica, and I want to show you something that's really relevant because it's prevalent and it's happening. Okay? And I want to read you something, because we talked about the fact that they constantly, and remember the theme today is going to be kind of whitewashing and changing of history. So I want to read you something. So first of all, you had this change.org petition, which thankfully, from what I can see, didn't do very well. Thank God. Had 50 supporters, and then I think it got closed. Okay, and it said, have the racist flag of Corsica changed. So this is the flag of Corsica with the 4 Moors on it. And by the way, it already has been changed because they've already tried to make the phenotype of the Moors look a little bit more European, like they're just black Europeans. And it says here, look, the flag features 4 cut heads. Can you see how they're changing it? Yeah, they're trying to make it sound like, oh, this is showing the vanquished foes. Okay, 4 cut heads of black Muslim Moor slaves. Yeah, notice the interpretation. Why would you put 4 beheaded slaves as a flag for your nation? Does that make any sense? Or for your city, or for your town, or for your district? A thing that in essence was derogatory to humanity itself. Notice that the person asking for this flag to be removed is not a black person, which you'll also see is normally a trait of what takes place or trend. The flag adorned by the island province adopted by Nation Pascal de Piauli in 1755 with a general disdain of North Africa in mind. If they're Northern Africa in mind, why are they jet black? Okay, let me not go into this. Let me not go into this because there's something else that I want to touch on as well. So I wanted you to see that because I wanted you to see something else. So I'm just going to copy that link. And this one's really important because it's really important, just like we did last week when we did the live stream and we touched on what they're doing in Coburg and they're trying to get rid of the Coburg Moor. I want to read you some of this page, okay? So just bear with me. It's going to be a little bit of a read, but it's really important that you kind of get what's going on here. So I'm going to read. Blindfolded Moors, the flags of Corsica and Sardinia. Okay, so the flag of Corsica is one of the most identifiable and unusual in Europe. Against the pure white backdrop, a black face is depicted in side profile. The dark outline makes a arresting contrast against the white. The image is even more striking as the black face is either blindfolded. Now, some of you are going to have the question mark, why is it blindfolded? With a ribbon wrapped around its eyes or features a white bandana on his forehead. So let's quickly scroll down. So I don't want to miss out any of the important parts. So typically European vexillological, I don't even know that word, tradition is dominated by crosses, including the Scandinavians, Saltire and more conventional St. George's cross. Stripes both, okay, we don't have to read all that. Why do these 2 Mediterranean islands feature this unusual design? Now, in the Corsican dialect, the symbol is called La Testa di Mori, the Moor's head. It originates in the Kingdom of Aragon and was certainly used in Sardinia after the Aragonese conquest in 1297. In Sardinia, 4 Moorish heads are separated by a cross of St. George, e Curto MOORS flag. Now, I want you to read this. Just, bear with me. But is the symbol even older than this? In both Spanish and Sardinian tradition, dating back to the 11th century CE, the Spanish version of the story, the symbol appears during celebrations following the victory in the Battle of Alcaraz by King Peter I of Aragon, and Navarre against the Arabs in 1096. The Sardinian version dates even earlier to 1017, when Pope Benedict II gave a banner featuring the design to a Pisan contingent fighting to help the Sardinians repel against the Saracens led by Mujahid al-Miri. Now remember, as you're reading this, A, the story could be a little bit twisted, but B, and more likely, Moors was not a definition of religion. Moors could be Christian. These head ties that are not eye banners, because you've got to read where those came from, but these head ties being worn by the Moors were the same ones that are worn by this Moorish nobility, this Christian Moorish nobility. Can you see they're wearing the same head ties? So these head ties are Moorish. They are nothing to do with Islam. Okay, they are Moorish head ties. But let me get back to this. Now, this is the important part. Originally, the four faces were turned right with bandages on their foreheads. Sometime during the 19th century, the faces flipped to the faces flipped to face left, and the bandages slipped over their eyes. Did you see that, guys? So sometime in the 19th century, they realized, hey, it doesn't really make sense that we've got these Moorish heads that are glorifying or showing images of Moors on our flag. We need to make it look derogatory. 19th century, they turned them around and they made the bandages cover their eyes. That was not the original flag design. Only in 1999 did the four Moors return to face right with uncovered eyes. So can you see how history is contorted to suit whatever the modern narrative is? Can you see that? You have a flag here which initially shows the head of four Moors. I don't believe there's anything to do with them being vanquished. This is them displaying themselves. They're not slaves. This is standard Moorish attire. This was worn by, as we can see in the tapestry, this is worn by Moorish nobility. So this is four Moorish heads wearing a head tie that was symbolic of Moorish nobility, if we're to believe what we see in this image. Okay, head ties symbolic of Moorish nobility on a flag. Their eyes are open, so this has got nothing to do with them being vanquished. And this is why they felt the need to try and change the flag in the 19th century. Okay, so you just have to be very careful. They're constantly trying to revise history and trying to explain away things that exist. Okay, so I just want to jump into that really quickly. Let's get back to the video. And while the video is playing, I will have a quick look in the chat. I haven't got any of my mods online, unfortunately, so I'll see if I need to do any modding while this is playing. Okay, I think, no, we're here, aren't we? Yep.
Preferring to ignore the evidence entirely, have proposed theories. But before we examine those, it's fundamental that we come to recognise a theoretical term known as presentism. A theory that Keith W. Crawford, PhD pharmacologist and health scientist administrator at the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, highlighted in a 2021 paper published in the African Archaeological Review, tackling two documentaries suffering from just this theory. The producers and archaeologists featured in Rise and Lost Kingdom imposed their own biases about black Africans onto the ancient Egyptians, implying that periods of animosity between Egypt and Kush were based on racial differences. This article will make the argument that the Black Pharaoh theme suffers from historical presentism. Presentism can be understood in this context as the imposition of present-day perspectives into interpretations of past events. Modern historians and archaeologists seek to avoid presentism in their work because they consider it a form of cultural bias and believe it creates a distorted understanding of their subject matter. Whilst this particular example was in reference to a differing if somewhat overlapping subject matter in the case of ancient Egypt, you will see that mainstream speculation at the justification for Moorish iconography and European heraldry is symptomatic of this very same presentism. take, this 2018 presentation at the New York Morgan Library and Museum titled The Monstrous Other in Medieval Art.
On the far left, a band of giant furry wildmen attack a castle inhabited by what 15th century people would have identified as Moors or Saracens, that is, fictionalized, racialized, denigrated notions of dark-skinned Muslims. Some of the Moors in the tapestries, including the king and queen, are shown with exaggerated features, large eyes, bright red lips, and absolutely black skin, part of a recurrent European tradition of stereotyping and demonizing people of African descent.
This all-encompassing reference to a so-called recurring European tradition that stereotypes and demonizes people of African descent is an oversimplification of an entire continent spanning centuries and given validity only by the modern post-colonial paradigm that we currently inhabit. Even the usage of the term stereotype could be considered somewhat inappropriate in its attribution to Middle Ages Europe, a time in which stereotypes will have had little means to being spread widely and easily, as in our modern era. No less across an entire continent, with its widely differing kingdoms and their similarly differing cultures. A fact understated in the all too frequently poised lens that characterises historical Europe as a single homogeneous monocultural entity. Are these medieval European depictions of people of African descent also stereotypical or demonizing, falling into the stated time?
So there we go. I'm glad that you've got this. 1 second. Is that going to work? Yeah. Thank you, first of all, Kimberly, for your $10 donation. Very much appreciated. So thanks for your hard work, KM. I've been interested in our history beyond Western slavery for years, and your channel and some others are providing more context than ever. And timing was fantastic, because if we have a look at this image here, remember what the person was trying to say to me? Oh, it's the heads of their vanquished foes. Do those look like vanquished foes to you guys? Honestly, yeah, these are clearly not vanquished foes. Okay. Once again, we see that Moorish head tie, which I said was significant of nobility. Okay, seemed to be how they dressed as Moorish nobilities. Okay, that kind of wrapped up tie around their hair. Why? This is consistent depictions of people on the British Isles, melanated people on the British Isles. Well, I say British Isles, so on the European shores. Okay, very consistent. Okay. So when you hear these stories and they try and append these things that don't match, these theories that don't match, they try to append slavery or append vanquished or append all of this stuff. Just, it's important that we just see with our eyes and we don't view it as though we're looking through a veil. You know, use your eyes, use your judgment to understand what you're looking at. So yeah, thank you very much, Kimberly, and thank you HH for the other donation, €2. I really appreciate it, man. Thank you very, very much. Yeah, okay, so I've done a couple of bans as well, which is why I went silent for a little bit. Hope I didn't miss too much of the video. Let me let it get back to playing.
Spanning European tradition of denigrating people of African descent? Dare I say, an extension of minstrel theatre? Or is it glorifying them, and instead to be viewed as evidence that whilst in certain parts of the continent of Europe, during certain periods of time, there reigned notions of anti-blackness? Elsewhere, contrary attitudes reigned. Attitudes that perhaps swayed in the entirely opposite direction to the disproportionately popular focus on the demonization of people of African descent.
And sorry, just to add to that really excellent point he just raised, this whole idea, and it's really important that we grasp this, stop trying to deal monolithically, mono-ethnically, mono-anything, monogenetically with ancient history and medieval history and even modern history. Stop looking at it through the lens of black equals good, black equals bad. Think of it as though race doesn't exist and black, white, brown equals humans. And with all races, you're going to get some people that were good, some people that were in charge, some people that were worshipped, some people that were venerated, and then you're going to get the very bottom of society, some people that were enslaved, some people that were mistreated. This is the nuance that you need to look through. So just because we see a couple of images or a few images of black people in positions of power, positions of nobility, positions of leadership, that doesn't remove the fact that you could have had black people in slavery. And likewise the same for white people. You could have had white people in power, in leadership, in monarchy, but then you could have had white people in slavery. You're dealing with a much more nuanced world than the world that we're living in currently. So I just want to kind of touch on that, because that's a really good point that he's raised there.
Based on the contemporary echoes of colonial white supremacy, when in fact it's far more likely that contempt towards others during these time periods wasn't drawn on the basis of ethnicity as they so often are in the 21st century, but on religion. A notion summed up by PhD author Cord Whitaker, Associate Professor in the Department of English and Creative Writing at Wellesley College and specialist in the literature of the Middle Ages, in an interview with historical commentator Andrew Aid King.
By looking at the Middle Ages,
I remember this interview. It was really good, and I do need to contact Dr. Cord. He's excellent. If you haven't watched it, find it back in my live streams. This was a live stream. We did have a few technical issues, but it was really, really good. Definitely worth a watch.
you can see the pieces starting to come together, because, you know, the black-white racial matrix is not a thing yet in the Middle Ages. There are various ideas circulating about blackness and whiteness, about holiness, about sinfulness, about purity, about impurity. Number of ideas floating around, and they have everything to do with who's Christian and who's Muslim and who's Jewish and who's pagan and who's, and who's something else, who's Zoroastrian, right? That's all in there. And for medieval people, that's really, medieval people in Europe and in England in particular, that's really the primary concern, is about confessional identity or religious identity. But as we move into the late Middle Ages and get into the Crusades, and it starts to become, religiously expedient, but also politically expedient, but also economically expedient, to be able to quickly say, oh, that person over there is probably not Christian. That person over there is probably Muslim, so they're probably the enemy. How can we tell that quickly? Right? While recognizing that at the same time, medieval people were still able to recognize that at the same time, it may not necessarily be right.
It's important that we approach these subjects with the nuanced contextual approach of the latter instead of the modernist oversimplifications of the former, or else fall into a category that can be frankly described as lazy scholarship. Lazy scholarship.
Absolutely. So sorry, that's just the point that I raised there, and I'm glad that Kapruki and Dr. Whitaker were able to articulate that so well. That's the point I was raising. We don't want to fall into these. When we study history, it's really important that we don't become, I want to say, myopic and dogmatic with our approach to history. Start believing, oh, well, black people can only do good and they can only do bad. And it's really important that we don't do that. Okay? It's really important we don't do that. It's really important that we kind of approach history with an honest lens, and we have to be willing to take the L's where they're given. We have to be willing, just like I said with, when I came across I want to say revelation, but the possibility that Queen Elizabeth might not have been white. And then when I read the descriptions of her being swarthy, and then when I saw the painting that sat beneath her portrait showing black women, that was like, I don't like this. This is uncomfortable. This doesn't make sense. I've been preaching for how long that this woman had issues and this, that, and the other. And I was actually very comfortable having nothing to do with England, because it gave me a nation I could point at and go, yeah, look at these English. And I had all of these kind of little anecdotes that I used to throw out, because they used to talk about the fact that, Africans taught the English how to wash. You know, we introduced soap, we introduced the toothbrush. Those are all facts, by the way. Africans introduced soap, we introduced toothbrush, we taught them about bathing daily. These are all stuff that the English never used to do before they met Africans. Yeah, and then and then you're given a little bit of stuff about, you know, black nobility, black presence. It's like, okay, okay, well, I'm gonna have to still hold on to that argument, but now it becomes very nuanced. Okay, now that same queen that I was dissing about taking her bath once a year, because that's what they said, if she turns out to be swarthy, I'm gonna have to hold that L. Yeah, I'm gonna have to hold that L, and this is difficult because we do like to do that. I have to say that as a kind of like, as a group, we do like to do that. We kind of like to look at our history and approach it as though we're some like we were faultless and we were just kind of like, it's like, yeah, this makes it all a bit messy. That's all I'm saying. It makes it all a little bit messy.
That brushes off any depictions of people of African descent in regions and time periods that modern scholarship likes to claim they do not belong as depictions of slaves, or worse, myths. Non-entities that detach these people from their once very real and very tangible identity.
So let's quickly have a read of this because it's quite important. It says Teutonic Knights, the Holy Roman Empire, the cross, Patty Iron Cross. I can't read that. That's what it says. Flag of Prince Bishopric of Montenegro. Okay, so he's noticing these things here. Okay, because they will just summarize that this person holding this flag of Montenegro, yeah, is Saint Maurice. All right, even though there's clearly an entire picture of different types of black and swarthy people in this image. Okay, quite clearly. And they'll just summarize and say, yeah, these are all different types of Saint Maurice. Okay, so yeah. And by the way, it's kind of in the German provinces that we see a huge amount of evidence of basically black knights. It's all around the German province, and I think if I get some time today, I'm going to take you through some of the research I've done in the area of Brandenburg to just kind of illustrate that point. Kapruki does a good job as well, so I'm going to let him play.
Cases such as this Dutch portrait of a young archer dated between 1639 and 1640 during the Holy Roman Empire and the 30 Years' War. Only 2 inscriptions of the portrait exist. The first, an engraving by Cornelis Vischer, circa 1648, reads, "Thus lifts the Moor his bow and arrow," or "the enemy or wildlife to eye." On the other hand, the 1650 reproduction of Vischer's portrait, held at the British Museum and published by George Pulley of London, reads as follows: "Thus armed the Indian with his dart and bow, pursues with eager eye his woodland foe." Though similar in theme, the caption here describes the archer as an American Indian, replacing the word Moor for Indian, the words apparently being interchangeable at the time. However, despite these inscriptions, one dated to a mere 8 years after the portrait's creation, we still find that this painting was documented by 20th century Dutch art historian Hofstede de Groot.
I'm just going to quickly bring that back because I hope that didn't go over people's head.
Bow, pursues with eager eye his woodland foe.
Okay, just in case that went over people's head. Thus armed the Indian with his dart and bow, pursues the eager eye his woodland foe. What was the Indian back then? Oh, whoa. That's gonna be a revelation to some people. Okay. Kapruki just kind of like, I like the way he just slipped it in and kept it moving. I hope you didn't miss that, guys. This is how they're defining an Indian. There's your copper coloured Indian, perhaps.
Reads as follows: "Thus armed the Indian with his dart and bow, pursues with eager eye his woodland foe." Though similar in theme, the caption here describes the archer as an American Indian, replacing the word Moor for Indian, the words apparently being interchangeable at the time. However, despite these inscriptions, one day...
And obviously, look, just to really, really quickly touch on the point, because it always obviously brings to mind the things that we're taught in school. And I remember being taught that the West Indies were called the West Indies because Christopher Columbus, when he found the Caribbean island, which is called the West Indies, and people don't call it the West Indies now because they think it's offensive, but that's because, well, it's not offensive. It's just that they used to call certain people Indians. But they called it the West Indies because he thought it was west of India, which I was like, now, I know this guy is kind of winging it a bit, and he's probably got other people doing his navigation, but there's no way on earth you've just told me the reason they call the West Indies because they believe this place is west of India, when he knew he just sailed from Africa, the west coast of Africa. Yeah, or that's where you get the current that takes you straight to America, by the way. It's from the west coast of Africa, and I believe it was the Africans that told him how to get to America. But let's even take the normal excuse. Okay, he sailed directly from Europe, from the port of Spain or something like that, and he sailed directly to America from there. Why on earth would he think he was west of India when he knew that India was to the east? This is the kind of stupidity that they feed us, okay? And we just kind of okay, yeah, it's called West. No, it's called West Indies because this was an India, i.e. these were Indians. This is what an Indian was to them. Think about the south of India, by the way. Think about the south. Think about the Andaman Islands. I've shown you the pictures of those. If you haven't done that, please Google Andaman Islands or Sentinel Island. Think about the Indians, what they may have looked like. Think about the fact that this was touched upon in, Herodotus touched upon the fact that the Indians and the Ethiopians were of the same stock. Okay, so this was an Indian. Just kind of putting that out there.
To a mere 8 years after the portrait's creation, we still find that this painting was documented by 20th century Dutch art historian Hofstede de Groot in 1915, who described the painting as merely a young Negro archer, completely ignoring the appropriate inscriptions given to us by the people living at the time of the portrait's creation. People who would have aptly recognised the context in which the boy in question lived, and thus his identity within that context, irrespective of the 21st century hubris that attempts to re-imprint its own interpretations on already titled paintings, and by what right.
Did you hear that? So this is how the named become nameless. This is how they write us out of history. Initially, he was labelled the Moor, the Indian, okay? Has a little poem to his name. When it gets to the 19th century or later on, where black people aren't important anymore, it becomes, Negro with a bow. That tends to be how it works.
We find this similarly instanced in the name of another Dutch painting entitled Portrait of an African Man, circa 1525 to 1530, whose identity yet remains anonymous. The Rijksmuseum, who own the painting, have publicly stated that it might be Christopher the Moor, a black archer recorded at the court of the Habsburg Emperor Charles V of the Holy Roman Empire. Meanwhile, in November 2014, a different explanation was offered by the literary and medieval scholar Maria José Govers, where she claimed the figures represented Saint Maurice, yet another gross and simple obfuscation that mythologizes black presence outside of the African continent.
So this Saint Maurice, as Kapruki's got to excellently touch on, and I think he touched on in this first video, is a European dumping ground for any black presence. Okay, you'll see knights all across Europe, particularly in Germany, all called Saint Maurice. And I've got a few things that I'd actually like to add to this, but I want to get through the video today as well. So if there's some time at the end, I'll show you some of the things that I'm going to add to kind of like bolster up that discussion. But it's very interesting the way they kind of just dump all of our presence and they create these characters that they can then use to basically just kind of like absorb and sweep up all of those messy Africans and melanated people and black people all over nobility and statues. We need to be able to explain this away. Okay, we can't call that one a slave, call it Saint Maurice. You don't get much more than that. There's about 4 or 5 characters that they revolve around when it comes to blacks in Europe, even if they don't fit.
or even in the circa 1580 Italian painting entitled Portrait of an African Slave Woman, a title exposing a shameful negligence that Oxford graduate and art historian Nicholas Hall rightly criticises. These portraits exist because these black folks were associated with or related to European nobility, but in most cases, the nature of their relationships has been obscured or forgotten.
Did you hear that? That's a really powerful quote. Okay? It's literally all we've been saying in these videos. These portraits exist because these black folks were associated with or related to European nobility. That's the only reason why someone gets painted. Okay? That's the only reason that someone gets painted. It's because they're related to nobility, or they are nobility. There's no other reason. You don't paint slaves. Okay, it's just not something that's historically done. You don't paint random people. Okay, they are nobles. So every time the amount of budget that went into hiring artists, okay, this is not something that could be done by common people.
Or related to European nobility, but in most cases, the nature of their relationships has been obscured or forgotten. Renaissance Europe would come to be associated homogeneously with white Europeans, while people of African descent would later become associated with slavery, the slave trade and colonial exploits. In drawing our attention to black figures, portraits like Karachi's force us to shift these figures from the margins of the artistic canon and emphasize their centrality to constructions of the West. Unfortunately, Karachi's subject is now remembered as merely an African woman, a black woman, or despite indications to the contrary, a slave. Though clearly she was a woman of import, given her fragment of the painting remains, while the rest was discarded or lost. With this
there was that little flash up there. Sorry,
given her fragment of the painting remains, while the rest was discarded or lost.
Wait, I'm trying to catch that little frame. He threw something out there.
With this...
I missed it. He does these little things, by the way. If you watch his videos, he has these little 1 or 2 frame flashes. It's really annoying because I find it hard to catch them. Try and catch them if you get to watch this by yourself.
In mind, we can more honestly inquire into the nature of Moorish iconography, shedding the presumptions of our modern ideologically racialized era in favour of the context of the time period in which these artworks were formed. With reference to some historical theories which attempt to justify Moorish iconography in European coats of arms as placed there by white families to symbolise those Moors that they vanquished during the Reconquista against the Moors in Europe. A theory proposed by the likes of William Cecil Wade in his Symbolisms of Heraldry, published in 1898, page 144. A Reconquista which we should also recognise was more likely declared on the basis of religion than of ethnic identity. However, Wade's theory falls short on a number of fronts, one of which stems from what one might term common sense. Whilst the ideological framework of today and the Middle Ages might differ to certain degrees, it still doesn't make much logical sense for members of white European families to use up space on their coats of arms in order to present their sworn enemies, often in positive, verging on majestic light. We know that of the 5 major components of a coat of arms, the shield, the crest, the helmet, the wreath and the mantle, it is the shield and the crest that provide the greatest freedom for specialised representations. The wreath and the mantle only ever exhibiting the colours adopted by the family and the style of the helmet a symbol of the bearer's rank. Does it really make much sense to waste one's crest in glorifying their sworn nemesis? And the Moorish connection isn't limited to crests alone, but also to the shield. We often observe Moorish crests sporting the very family's colours and charges as adorned on the shield, and sometimes explicitly emblazoning the Moorish iconography itself.
Here's another point actually, and this is where it did start to get interesting, because looking into coat of arms, you either in Europe, the only people, if we're gonna go by the vanquished enemies thing, based on the Wappen books that are available, we get the impression that the only people that were ever vanquished were Moors, because I'm not going to say there's few, but there's not a whole load of non-Moorish people displayed in these Wappen books. There's not a whole load. There is a few, but there's not a load. It certainly suggests that there's a huge impression of Moorish people in those areas. And the reason I raised that is because I was doing a search and I was trying to find paintings of knights, European knights, contemporaneous ones to like the 15th, 14th century, because we got so many images of black knights, so many, loads. And I really struggled, like genuinely struggled. I actually could barely find any. And I wanted to see ones, because I was looking into, let me just quickly share with you what I was looking into. So I was looking into these ones which were commissioned by Cardinal Albrecht of Brandenburg, or Cardinal Albert of Brandenburg. Albrecht is just the German pronunciation. And I was looking at this one in particular. I'm just going to quickly pop it on the screen. If it loads, okay. Here it is. I need to close that all down. I'm just going to stop crashing. Yeah, this one in particular, because we'll talk about this one later. But I was looking for ones that are kind of in this style. And I really, 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 really struggled to find many, if any. So what I found bizarre is, why am I only finding images of black knights at this particular moment in time? Don't get me wrong, later on you see loads of them, but I was looking for ones in this time period. And that's not to say that I couldn't find any paintings of European or white people, but they tended to be different things. They tended not to be knights, which I found really interesting. I could only find like reproductions or ones that were painted kind of like in modern times. So I'm gonna continue that search anyway. Because I would like to run the comparison, but it was really weird. I couldn't find anything to compare it. I was just kind of like stuck with these images of black knights. So it raises a lot of question marks to me. Was knighthood something that was reserved for people of black or Moorish descent? I don't know. I'm not going to answer that question as yet. I haven't done enough, but it certainly was a massive question mark to me. But yeah, I'm going to close all these images down, because otherwise they're going to start crashing. Let's carry on watching.
Observe this in light of Wade's theory might beg one to view it as a nonsensical kind of self-imposed Moorish colonialism of European heraldry, claiming in death the families of the white Europeans that supposedly killed them, a reconquista from the grave. We must conjointly acknowledge the code of chivalry that all knights were sworn to, even if they didn't always abide by it. An honour code similar to that of the samurai code of Bushido, encompassing a spectrum of virtues, including that which called for women to be protected and cherished. Moorish women that we also find adorning family crests. Does it then abide by the code of chivalry for those bearing the coats of arms in question to essentially brag about their slaying of Moorish women? Would that have been particularly brave? Bravery being another fundamental tenet of the chivalric code. We might also reject this theory on the grounds that in so many of the Moorish depictions, the Moors aren't dressed like Moorish Muslims at all, adorning European Christian regalia. Christian Bibles, crucifix and liturgical headdress and scepters, in stark contrast to the turbans and flowing robes we so often and expectantly observe in Moorish portraiture and read about in writings describing.
So to be clear there, really well put, that Moors, just to be clear, does not equal Muslim. Okay? Moors does not equal Muslim. Did a lot of Moors in Southern Europe in particular convert to Islam? I believe so. I believe a whole swath of them did, because a whole load of Africans did. In fact, I've always kind of reported, because a lot of people had this idea that there was this massive Arab invasion into Africa, and the Arabs kind of like went marauding through with their horses, and they by force converted all of North Africa, a load of the Sahel, quite a lot of the Guinea region, and they forced them, bow now, worship Allah. Yeah, no, it didn't happen. I can tell you right now, the people responsible for propagating Islam in Africa were Africans. And I've said this ad nauseum. Okay, the Mali Empire was it was an Islamic empire. That's a fact. Okay, so the Kingdom of Mali was an Islamic empire. The Kingdom of Songhai was an Islamic empire, but they were all African. There was no Arabs enforcing Islam on these people. In fact, I would say in the Middle Ages, Africans were far more responsible for the propagation of Islam than Arabs were. And actually, Arabs have been written into Islamic history in Europe and Africa recently. So a lot of people have gone back and made people Arabs who weren't Arab. The Moors were African Muslims, not Arabs. The Malian Empire were African Muslims, not Arabs. So these people were African. And the Moors were European Muslims, black European Muslims. That's what they were. They had don't get me wrong, they had that kind of like Ibero-Mauritian link, which kind of linked those people right back to antiquity, by the way. So the people of southern kind of Spain, Portugal, the Iberian Peninsula, and the Mauritanian region, that Northwest African region, have always been contiguous. This link goes back genetically centuries. Okay, so that kind of like single group of people, who I believe is the kind of like origin spot for a lot of Moors, they go back a long time. But the point I'm raising is that Islam was very much owned by Africans. Okay, it was very much owned by Africans. That's one of the things you have to. The recent spread of Islam that people associate with the Arabs is linked to the Ottoman expansion. So when the Ottomans began expanding throughout Europe, the Middle East, and that was quite a successful Islamic expansion. That was a second wave of Islam, and that's what gave you the modern Arab that people associate with Islam. But this version of Islam that spread throughout Africa post 700 AD and into Europe, across quite a lot of Europe, was very much an African advancement and a black European advancement. So it's really important to kind of distinguish when you see Islam or hear about Islam, it doesn't necessarily mean Arabs. That modern Levantine spread is a result of the Ottoman expansion, and that's when the Ottomans and the Mamluks and the Turks spread, and they spread actually into the Arabian Peninsula. So a lot of the people you see in modern day Arabian Peninsula are descendants of the Mamluks and the Turks. They're from that kind of Turco-Syrian area. That's where they're from, and they've settled in the Arabian Peninsula. But the old Arabs would have been consistent with probably with African people, but we'll come on to that in another time.
As can be observed in the 16th century Chavaris del Rey, an oil painting of the King's Fountain in Lisbon by an anonymous Flemish painter. Of the abundance of swarthy people inhabiting the painting, we might scope out the horse-borne man within the foreground, a swarthy knight adorning the emblem of the Order of Santiago. The Order of Santiago, being the most prestigious order within Iberian society at the time, and to which the requirements for membership demanded the member and their entire lineage be Christian, have the capability of financially maintaining themselves without public funds, to be literate, a sponsor of the arts, and for none of their lineage to be deemed inferior or of an enslaved nature. And so what then? Do we conclude that these are Christianized Moors, baptized into the faith and converted into a European Christian identity, much like the Vikings underwent during their conquest of Central Europe? But then this returns us to Wade's original theory, and begging the question, why would the Christian religious crusades have had to kill these fellow Christians in the first place? In a final criticism of this theory, we conclusively reference the fact that not only do these European families adorn Moorish iconography in their coat of arms, but also in family name. J.A. Rogers, in his Nature Knows No Colour line, highlights this point in rejection of such prevailing theories. Who were these blacks? Wade, Grand Maison, and some others say that they represent Moors whom the Crusades fought in Spain and Palestine. Some, as Goff says, represent trade and exploration, that is, of whites who had ventured into black men's lands. For instance, Sir John Hawkins, father of the English slave trade, had a bound Negro in his coat of arms. Both of these views are right only in a very small way, because they do not explain why so many of these families with Negroes are named Moor, Blackamoor, and the like.
So yeah, just to be clear there, yep, the name Moor did carry weight in Europe, and this kind of moves on to another point of names. I'm not going to go into a long one right now, but obviously you've seen from the stream that was played earlier, my first name is Andrew, and I've always been well, you know, Christian. I always call it a Christian name, and then I've had people come up to me very proud and say, "That's a Scottish name, mate." That's a really poor Scottish accent. It's a Scottish name. And so I've always kind of like, oh yeah, okay, you know, I've got a Scottish name, so what? You know, it's a Christian. It was based on I used to say, oh, it's based on a Christian name. It was based on so really technically it's Aramaic actually, and it became Scottish. You know, trying to give a clever answer. It's a Scottish name, but guess what? Andrews is a name that belonged to a Moorish family. You can find the crest of the Andrews actually. So the name Andrew actually has Moorish origins. I might even just quickly dig into my I think it might be in Nature Knows No Colour lines. I might dig into that book and I might find you the coat of arms for Andrews, so you can see it's got one of these Moorish heads on it as well. So I'm actually quite proud of that name now. I'm like, yeah, well, you know, it's a Moorish name, so but it's interesting because it makes you look at things like names differently, and we spoke about this a little bit about Morris. So if you're out there, and I do know a few black Morrises, I'm like, that's a family name. Yeah, if you're West Indian or such as Caribbean and you got the surname Morris, or even American, that's probably a family name that dates back hundreds if not thousands of years. So it makes you look at things like that a little bit differently. Can I say a big thank you to Kinda Lynch for, I'm glad you made the distinction. I'm not sure what you're referring to there. Might be the Islam point, I'm guessing, but either which way, I really appreciate your $10 donation. Thank you so much. Sekou Kela says Sunjata Keita, founder of Mali, was not a Muslim. Fair enough. I'd love to, I'm happy to accept that as a correction. Maybe not in its foundation. I'm under the impression it certainly became an Islamic nation, but I'll be happy for you to even correct me on that. And you know what, that actually comes onto another point. This is a good point, and I'm glad you actually mentioned that, Sekou, because this goes back to script. So I released a video a few weeks ago now about the Egyptian hieroglyphic kind of, I want to say alphabet for want of a better word. It's not really alphabet, but I'm going to say alphabet because we all know what that means, and how basically most of our modern letters in the Latin alphabet descend directly from Kemetic hieratic, which is basically a kind of shorthand version of the hieroglyphics. And if you haven't watched that video, please watch it, because it shows very, very clear genetic links between the way we write today. Actually, it's kind of been proven that every single script in the world descends from ancient Egyptian. Every single script. So even the Sanskrit and the Indian Vedas, all the scripts in the East, including they all descend to ancient Egyptian. There's actually quite a few articles on that, so I'm not going to go into that. I'm going to let you guys read up on that. I might do a live stream on it, actually. I think I will, because it kind of goes hand in hand with research I've already done. Why am I raising that? The point I'm raising that is the Arabic script became very powerful, pretty much kind of like, post 800 AD. the Arabic script was adopted. And I think this was a large part of the reason. It was kind of hand in hand, what came first, the chicken or the egg, but this is part of the reason why Islam was so successful, because the Arabic script was adopted. So you have, even in Mali, for instance, people think all of the books in Timbuktu, the Library of Timbuktu, which was the largest library and remained the largest library in the world until I think the building of Oxford, in the Oxford University Library, I can't remember what it was. It was quite recent, though, maybe like 18th century or something like that. But before then, the Library of Timbuktu was the largest library in the world, literally for centuries. Like, you've never had that many books in one place. So Africa, Central West Africa, has been home to the largest library on the planet or on the realm, I should say, for a very, 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 very long time, to be clear to everyone. Now, not all of the books are written in Arabic, although all of the books pretty much use Arabic script. So this is the same thing. So we all use the Latin script, but you can have something written in French, Spanish, German, blah, blah, blah. They all use the same script, i.e. the same set of letters. But if you can read English, it doesn't mean you can read German, which everyone can, I'm sure we can all agree. So a lot of West African languages and Central African languages were converted or were written out using the Arabic script. So I think one of them, or that was used quite commonly, was called Ajami, where the Arabic script was used and it was converted into local dialects. So a lot of the kind of like basic Arabic reading scholars, they're not able to read a lot of the the kind of medieval scripts from the Kingdom of Mali. So why am I raising all of this? The association of Islam a lot of the time comes from the fact that a lot of the evidence that we have is based on this Islamic script. Arabic script, is based on this Arabic script. So it's the Arabic script that causes everyone to assume that Islam was dominant, but actually it could have just been use of the Arabic script that's given people this perception. But actually there might have been periods of, Islamic rulers, sultans, etc. But that might not have always been the case. It might have been times when it was, for want of a better word, Christian, but they still had the Arabic script as their dominant language. So also dominant script, not language. Okay. So yeah, it's important that is actually identified. So I'm glad you raised that point, Sekou, regarding Sunjata Keita, founder of Mali, not being a Muslim, because I wasn't aware, and I'm glad that you kind of like shared that with everyone.
McRitchie is correct when he says that families with the name Moor had Moors as their ancestors. He adds, "Nor can the Moors of heraldry be explained sufficiently on the theory that the founders of the families bearing Moors as supporters and Moors' heads as crests had won their spurs in assisting the Spaniards to expel the Moors. The bearing among ancient coat of arms is too common to admit this explanation. A frequency of depictions that Rogers, prior to this explanation, presented in reference to Moorish iconography in European coats of arms, stating that the latter appear by the thousands in heraldry. I counted 497 families in Rietstap's Armorial General that had one or more Negroes in their coats of arms. Some had as many as 6. Seebamcher's Wappen Book of 88 volumes had even more. Besides, Rietstap gives few extinct families, some of whose descendants are no doubt now living. His works too deal principally with the continent."
So, I just want to point in that. Remember, I was talking about this earlier, about the fact that there's so many of these coats of arms clearly displaying the Moorish people as their kind of at the core as founders. So even if you did go on that second fallacious interpretation, which says we vanquished Moors, our family vanquished Moors to kind of get where we are, even if you went in that interpretation, this would suggest still that a widespread European genocide took place and wiped out every single black person on the continent, but all of the entire continent was being essentially run by black Moors. So there's not really any way you can swing it that doesn't get us to the same conclusion, okay? Because if all of these families are basically saying we vanquished Moors to get here, it's kind of like, well, how's that any different? What's the difference then? So you stole your wealth from a Moorish family, just like the wild men and the Moors. Or so you're either celebrating your Moorish ancestors, or you're celebrating the fact that your ancestors killed Moors to get what you got. That's it, really, isn't it? There's not really any other interpretation. So it kind of brings us full circle to the same place, doesn't it?
So not many British families were named. Later, with only a little research, I found 162 of the latter with one or more Negroes. With that in mind, it's safe to say that the conjecture of the Crusades, among other theories, are equally suffering from presentism and this generalisation of lazy scholarship, representative of the colonial and post-colonial time periods out of which these theories are arising. This leads us onto another presentist rebuttal, the repeated excuse of Saint Maurice and the Theban Legion alongside the character of the Black Magus, member of the three magi that visited the birth of Jesus in Bethlehem. Saint Maurice was an Egyptian military leader who headed the Theban Legion of...
So I remember I spoke about the characters. He just named two there, so I'm glad he did that. Saint Maurice, dumping ground number 1. The Black Magi, dumping ground number 2. He's mentioned, there's not many of them, like I said, they rehash the same characters over and over again to explain, inexplicably, present black people.
Rome in the 3rd century, often depicted throughout artworks, being accompanied by...
So, and by the way, I'm just going to go back to this image here. This is an image of, I believe, Cardinal Albrecht of Brandenburg, could be. It looks like him. And I believe this may be Albert I of Prussia, or of Prussia, the Prussian Empire. And I've got a reason for believing that, which I will kind of share with you guys if time permits later. But yeah.
The Theban Legion of Rome in the 3rd century, often depicted throughout artworks, being accompanied by the Theban Legion. Before continuing, I'd like to preface by pointing out that the European attitude of the time that viewed the native Egyptian Saint Maurice and the Theban Legion as black Africans is only further evidence towards ancient Egyptians' indigenous Africanity.
Truth bomb there. Thank you very much for putting that in there. I told you Kapruki's good, isn't he? Okay, so you can't have it two ways, by the way, Europeans. You can't have it two ways. You can't go around saying all the black people, all the clearly black people, yeah, not kind of lightly swarthy, all the jiggity jet black people that you've got all over Europe, they're all Saint Maurice, and Saint Maurice is an Egyptian, but the Egyptians weren't black. No. You can't be doing that. Okay? If you're going to call all of these people Saint Maurice, then please can you be consistent with that? Say it with your chest and say, and the Egyptians were black, because Saint Maurice is an Egyptian. Okay? You can't have it both ways. Let's keep it real. So I'm glad that he touched on that point. I like the way he just kind of slipped it in there.
But I digress. Saint Maurice is one of the most widely venerated saints of the martyred group, mythologized for his execution in Switzerland alongside his legion after refusing to attack fellow Christians on behalf of the late Roman Emperor Maximian, leading him to become for a time the patron saint of knights as well as patron saint of the Holy Roman Empire.
Now, I mean, I'm looking at that, and by the way, that's not the that is not the banner of the Holy Roman Empire. That's the banner of Prussia, okay, which was the dominant region at that time. So you didn't have basically Germany, it was Prussia, okay, and it was partly in Russia, partly in Germany, partly in fact, let me just bring it up on a map so you can all see what the Kingdom of Prussia looked like. Okay, So this is what the Kingdom of Prussia looked like. So you can see it contains Brandenburg, which comes up quite a lot. You can see its borders stretch right up into Denmark, right into Russia, Poland, Austria. You can see it's a considerable empire. Bavaria, okay, which is another area that we have considerable black presence. So I actually think a lot of the black presence that we have throughout the region was due to this Kingdom of Prussia, which I am leaning towards it being essentially a black kingdom. That's what I think the rulers of Prussia were black from the research that I've been putting in. Now, I won't say it conclusively that I'm absolutely 100% correct, but all of these regions that fell in there tend to have these very black coats of arms around that time. And I'm going to show you some things about this region here, Brandenburg, which hopefully will be enlightening to you. But just to show you as well, to be consistent about that, this is the Prussia or Prussian coat of arms, okay, which you'll see banded about a lot. And one of the things that historians will say incorrectly is they'll say, when they see it, like in Kapruki's video, they'll say, well, this is an image of the banner of the Holy Roman Empire, and this is not the banner of the Holy Roman Empire. The banner of the Holy Roman Empire was a two-headed eagle, not a single-headed eagle, okay? And it was a two-headed eagle to symbolize the two parts of the Roman Empire, the East and the Western branch. So I'm just going to quickly pop that on the screen. Oh, it's supposed to be there. So this is what the coat of arms or the weapon of the Holy Roman Empire looked like. Okay, this is what it looked like. The Prussian one is the single black eagle. Sometimes had a crown on its head. So these people that they're trying to hide, you can see here, this is Holy Roman Empire banner.
Refusing to attack fellow Christians on behalf of the late Roman Emperor Maximian, leading him to become for a time the patron saint of knights.
But this is Kingdom of Prussia. So this is a knight of the Kingdom of Prussia that you're seeing here,
as well as patron saint of the Holy Roman Empire. In response to Moorish iconography, many attempt to propose the overarching theory that Moorish heraldry and coat of arms are representations of Saint Maurice or the Black Magus.
There we go, Black Magus and Saint Maurice procreating quite a lot there, because I mean, so I'm going to use the arrow keys that someone actually advised. Oh yeah, they work. Thank you. I should listen to you guys more, by the way. Nays, thank you. Could you be telling me for time? Use the arrow keys. So look, how many black magi's can you have in one image? How many black magi's does it take to screw in a light bulb? It's like, come on, give these people their names back, seriously.
Magus. However, this theory falls short for the same reasons we've been able to debunk prior conjecture through the repeated presence of Moorish women in these coats of arms. Saint Maurice, nor any member of his Theban legion, were women. And as for the Black Magus, well, it isn't an accident that they're often popular.
Yep. Oh, man, he's firing today. Explain the women then. Okay, so if all the heads on your banners are Saint Maurice, explain the black women. You gotta look at them all, the Black Madonna. Or are these real women? Are these real founding members, matriarchs of these actual families being depicted? Always in glory as well. There's nothing unglorious. This one's got wings and a crown on. I mean, I don't really know how you can get more glorious. I don't know. I don't know what people want to see or are trying to see in terms of calling these people vanquished. It doesn't make any sense.
Referred to as the Three Wise Men. And so again, we must call into question whether this pointing to Saint Maurice as being yet another expression of this lazy scholarship that doesn't attempt to scrutinise and entertain theories that will actually accommodate the presence of Moorish people in these European spaces. We find the excuse of Saint Maurice equally thrown at European portraiture and statues often labelling any depiction of a Negro knight as automatically Saint Maurice. In order to present flaws in this argument, we might look to the Negri family of Italy, in combination with a famous painting currently housed in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. With reference to houseofnames.com's page on the Negri family, we can learn that from Italy have emerged a multitude of noble families, including the distinguished Negri family. Italian people were originally known only by a single name, but it became necessary to adopt a second name as populations grew and travel became more frequent. The surname Negri is derived from the Italian word negri, which means black. It was most likely originally a nickname for someone with a dark complexion, perhaps of an immigrant from North Africa. The same North Africa that evidence concludes black people are indigenous to.
And do you notice how they like to throw out North Africa? They see a black person, they say, oh yeah, North African. Or someone's got some black DNA, like, oh yeah, you got North African DNA. Or everything's North African. But then when you turn around and say, okay, so North Africans are black, we're agreeing that. No, North Africans are Arab. What? Do you see how they do this? It's like, they don't give you anything. It's the same thing, like just like what we discussed with Saint Maurice. He's Egyptian. Yeah, Saint Maurice all over. All these black people, oh, he's Saint Maurice. Yeah. Everyone agrees Saint Maurice was black. Saint Maurice is Egyptian. Yes, he was. So the Egyptians are black? No, don't be stupid. Where do you win? Do you understand? They're never going to give you the W. This is why it's almost impossible that we can our histories or our interpretations of histories can coexist. They can't. Our interpretations of history cannot coexist because they will not ever give black people credit in history. That's the bottom line. You have to understand that. So us trying to make our history kind of like come to this kind of like middle ground, there is no middle ground, as you are seeing here. Okay, there's no middle ground, because we're going to turn around and say, yeah, you need to acknowledge the black British royalty and the black European royalty, and they're going to say there was no black European royalty. We'll give you tell you what, here's the compromise. We'll say that Queen Elizabeth had a slave. How about that? Who she loved. How about that? Slave who she had a little affair with. How's that? That sound good to you? That's as good as you're gonna get. So forget it. So forget trying to coexist our histories. It's never gonna happen. That's the bottom line.
Obviously. On the same website, we can find the ancient coat of arms of the Negri family, symbolised by 5 uniform wheat crop set against a blue background. Moving on to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, we will find the painting by anonymous southern German artist dated between 1515 to 1520, titled Saint Maurice and the Theban Legion.
Don't just try and sneak in here. Kapruki's online, everybody. If you haven't subscribed to him, that's whose video we're watching. So if you're watching it and you're like, this is pretty damn good, you know what you need to do, eh? Yeah, you know what you need to do. 400 people online, and I'm hoping that you're all subscribed. If you're not, you have permission to quickly click on his link, subscribe, but make sure you keep this window open. Kapruki, you can pay me back by just keeping an eye on the on the chat. That's it. It's good to have you in here, my friend. I need you guys to watch this part because this is really important. Okay, I'm not going to interrupt again for a bit because I want you to watch this part about the Negri family.
A title ascribed by the museum to the painting, despite the fact that without the anonymous artist's input, we cannot know for certain that this painting was in fact of Saint Maurice and the Theban Legion at all. And in fact, when you look closely at the painting and see that the Theban Legion are bearing a flag adorned with the very Negri family coats of arms we just referenced, in addition to the artist's purposeful decision...
So just to be clear here, they need to call this person Saint Maurice by all means, yeah? Because you've got a black knight, and all black knights have to be Saint Maurice. The problem with this Saint Maurice is that he's surrounded by blacks, all right? Surrounded by blacks and swarthies and Tories. Okay, I mean, this guy's super black. And you know what I love about this? Once again, let's just really appreciate the nuance in phenotypes. Okay, people, and I hate to say his name, no disrespect, but people like Metatron, these are the nuance that they don't see. They assume that this is even in England. We're not talking about ancient Egypt here. Sorry, this is not England. This is Europe. This is even in Europe. Okay, they understood the nuance. I mean, there's likely a black artist, but I'm not going to get into that. They appreciated the nuance in that black people could be light-skinned, medium-toned, dark-skinned, all in the same painting. I'm sure no one's going to argue with me that all of these people are black. I hope you won't. They're all clearly black people. But black people have never had a problem painting their nuance, okay? We understand that we are light brown, reddish brown, yellowy brown, dark brown, jet black. All of these tones are expressions of black people. So to get around that problem, basically they've called this the Theban Legion. They've called this the Theban Legion, yeah? Nothing about this looks even mildly Egyptian. This is quite clearly regional European regalia. But they're going to call it the Theban Legion. Like I said, they're not going to give black people anything. Why would you call this the Theban Legion? Does this look like these people are dressed from Upper Egypt? Does these people look like they're from Upper Egypt at any stage in history? Absolutely ridiculous. Let me bring it back a bit. Let it play.
The Theban Legion at all. And in fact, when you look closely at the painting and see that the Theban Legion are bearing a flag adorned with the very Negri family coats of arms we just referenced, in addition to the artist's purposeful decision to leave the coat of arms exposed enough to observe it, and depicting the central figure of the painting holding onto that very same flag, is it more likely to presume that this painting is not in fact of St. Maurice and the Theban Legion, but of the Negri family themselves, a family whose name and origins is already associated with black skin, and whose coat of arms is being adorned by a multitude of Negro individuals.
I mean, for God's sake, they're called the Negri family. Okay? Their coat of arms has got 3 black heads, 3 black Moorish heads on it. Not beheaded, alright? Just Moorish heads on it. And they're called the Negri family. If you're not going to give a family called black, whose coat of arms has got black people on it, and has a painting, and you're going to say, yeah, this painting is not of them, it's of the Theban Legion. Can you see what we're dealing with here? All right. It almost reminds me of a country called Black, who called their people the Blacks, who we're in a raging debate with at the moment about not being black. It just reminds me of it. You know, I don't know why. It all feels very familiar, what's taking place here.
Perhaps, if the museum curators or whoever had slapped the label of St. Maurice onto the painting had attempted to scrutinise the painting beyond the black faces exhibited in it, they might have noticed these finer nuances. But heck, who can blame them? Because despite the evidence, mainstream scholarship still stubbornly refuses to consider the alternative and by and large more sensible reasons for pre-colonial African presence in Europe and beyond.
So actually, on that note, since he's touched on that, I do want to just touch on a bit of research that I did that kind of complements that. So just bear with me, because this won't take very long, and it's basically addressing the same point. Okay, so I showed you this image earlier, okay? And this image, okay, has been called, guess who? Yep, St. Maurice, you're right. This image has been called St. Maurice, but did started doing some research into this image, because obviously I wasn't satisfied the fact that this is St. Maurice. To me, this is clearly depicting someone regional of the time. And it turned out, after I did a bit of digging, that this image belong to the Brandenburg family, okay, or the family of Brandenburg. And I showed you Brandenburg earlier. It's literally one of the largest regions in Prussia. So I started doing some reading about the image, and here's kind of like a larger remake of the image, so you can see it in full. And one of the first things that they said, which I instantly identified was incorrect, is they said that he carries the banner. The reason they know St. Maurice is because he carries the banner of the Holy Roman Empire. And bear in mind, that came from historians, okay? So historians are turning around and saying, oh yes, he carries the banner of the Holy Roman Empire, and he clearly does not. Like I showed you before, the Holy Roman Empire had a two-headed black eagle, and this is a single-headed one with a crown. So I started doing my research, and I figured out that that was the, like I said, the banner of Prussia, okay? So then I started thinking, well, if this isn't St. Maurice, it would be good to know who it is. Okay, it would be good to kind of start uncovering some possibility of who it is. So I started doing some digging, and the first thing that I found, like I said to you before, was the coat of arms. Now, ignoring, this is one of the coat of arms of the Brandenburg family. Now, ignoring this dude here, because I'm not going to go into that, absolutely could be a part of it. Once again, I'm not suggesting, this is not an old one, by the way, this is like 18th century, but the first thing that jumped out to me is if you have a look at the armor of the person here. So I'm just going to quickly shrink and show you the armor. Now, armor was something that was very distinctive, okay? Armor was like a signature for families in those days. So if you have a look at the armor and the armor of this image, you'll notice that the armor is pretty much identical, okay? This armor is identical. So that instantly said to me, okay, that's not an accident there. This is clearly a depiction of the same armor. So if this was an image of St. Maurice, why would they dress him in the armor of the Brandenburg family? Okay. So I kept doing a bit more digging on that kind of note. And it turns out that image was a part of a larger piece of work that belonged to the House of Brandenburg. So this was the larger image, and I'm tempted to feel or to believe that this has been somewhat tampered with, because actually this was the only part they could find. These ones, I think, were found in different places later. So it kind of like did put up slight alarm bells for me. But it still didn't explain why the only person in this piece, which was sanctioned or at least commissioned by Albert of Brandenburg, the only person flying the banner of Brandenburg and Prussia was this guy over here. So I started looking into it some more. I say started, but I looked into it some more, and then I did a bit of digging, and I found this image of Albert I of Brandenburg, who was basically the ruler of Prussia. So this is Albert I of Brandenburg. Let me show you what he looks like. Now, bear in mind, this image may have been whitewashed, but have a look at this. This is Albert I of Brandenburg. So even on a whitewashed image, this at very least is a mixed race person. Okay, you can see the hair. Okay, the texture of the hair. This is at very least is a mixed race person. Now, I'm of the impression that this has been whitewashed slightly. But even just looking at the hair, this, like I said, at the very least is a mixed race person. So certainly someone of African descent. So then it starts to tie things all in together. I also found this coin, which I'm going to quickly show you, of Albert I, an older Albert I nonetheless, but still Albert I, that I want to share with you. So here's a coin of Albert I here. There's Albert I, there's George, okay? Look at the nose, look at the lips. To me, that's I know what I'm seeing, okay? So this coin of Albert I, once again, looked quite consistent. Well, I was like, okay, we're getting somewhere here. So, in essence, what we're seeing is this kingdom of Prussia and this saint, has been, these people that they're basically calling Saint Maurice are not Saint Maurice. They are members of the family. Okay, these are people who are members of these houses. They're flying the banners. You would not get a random or anyone to just fly the banner of the house or fly the banner of Prussia, okay? You can quite clearly see that these people are members of the family, and we are posthumously attempting to write them out of history. But the evidence, just like Kapruki is doing, is there for us to uncover. The evidence is there. It just takes someone to ask the question or to demand evidence that's better than the evidence that we're being given about who these people are. And it would be good to give these people back their name. So yeah, let me let it play on from there.
Could have led to the portrait being aptly named a painting of the Negri family, instead of the habitual recycling of the archetype of Saint Maurice in the Theban Legion, mythologized characters as opposed to real people with real identities. This leads us on to our conclusion, that in light of the evidence in question, we are forced to finally deduce that people of African descent have likely been living part and parcel with European society for a great deal longer than modern scholarship chooses to recognise, in all strata of European society, from common folk to their nobility, as neighbours, as equals, as rulers. A legacy of the near 800 years of Moorish domination and
I'm sorry, I'm just going to go back to this
rulers.
image. Okay, so this image here, I'm going to pause it here. And the reason I'm going to pause this image here is actually I'm going to show you guys something that a member of my Discord sent to me, okay? Because I want you guys to understand exactly what we're up against when it comes to investigating our history. So I've got, so by the way, on my Discord, I've got the most amazing group of people that are just totally on it. I learn so much from them, and they are very challenging in the things that they ask as well, which is good because it keeps me on my toes in terms of research and bringing new things your way. But I just want to show you really quickly a conversation that a member of my Discord had with a curator, so you can see the kind of challenges that we're going to face in terms of investigating our history. So let me show you this, because you won't believe it unless you read it for yourself. I think it's here. Yeah, here it is. I was shocked, and this is the kind of thing, like, it takes a lot to shock me. Okay, so I'm going to just actually pull my Discord onto the screen. Kapruki, if you're there, or any of my mods, could you post a link to the Discord as well? If you do want to join, if you're kind of serious about that kind of stuff, please do. You're very welcome. So this is a member of my Discord called Junie B. Is it here? Start from here? No. Yeah, here. So I'm going to read what they sent, because they actually inquired with someone regarding this image. Open in browser. Maybe I need to do that. Yes, I can zoom in a bit. All right, so just bear with me, because I want you guys to read this. All right, this will take a couple of minutes for us to get through, but it'll be worth it. Yes, I've imaged in identification of an individual that is displayed on the Salisbury roll of arms. The individual pictured based off of cross-referencing the heraldic images shown and the history of the Garter, I have identified as Roger Mortimer, the 2nd Earl of March, and that's supported in the book Ancient and Modern Britons, and I think it's also supported by J.A. Rogers in his book Nature Knows No Colour Lines. But yeah, so Roger Mortimer, the 2nd Earl of March, and his wife Philippa Montague. I would like to know if I am correct on this, and if so, why is the individual seem to be what looks like a phenotypically black man? Can you tell me any more of this image and manuscript? And now that I've identified the couple, if there will be an update to who the image represents. So he's basically asking, this image of the person is not unidentifiable. It's not a mystery. We know their name. Why is their name not being used? Why are you obfuscating? And just have a look at this reply, guys. Have a look at this reply. Let me open this in browser, because if this doesn't knock you off your chair, nothing will. I believe your identification of this image in the Salisbury roll is quite correct. However, I cannot agree with your analysis. What is depicted here is a warrior in full armor, and his face is enclosed in a steel helm. None of his skin is visible. None of his skin. I see a nose and I see some very pronounced lips. Where do you see the cognitive dissonance? And by the way, just to be clear about who that person is, okay, in case you were wondering, Dr. A.C. Gray, F.A. This is fully qualified PhD. Yeah, and he's saying, face? What face? There's no face there. It's full armor. Do you see? This is what we have to deal with. Do you understand why I am not interested? Honestly, I am not interested in this whole trying to convince people that are not there to be convinced about our history. We really just got to not give a damn and just do our own thing, because we're not going to get honest discourse if that's what their doctors are doing. If that's the kind of responses we're getting when we're showing Roger Mortimer, who, this is something that, you know, even I thought we were past the point of controversy when it came to this image. But for them to just actually outright deny that this is a black man and say, skin? No skin, that's armor. Are you crazy? It's like... And then, I mean, I could go on with that conversation because the person on my Discord actually then went on, the same person, then went on to post them images of people whose faces are actually covered with armor. And they're like, can you see that these are not the same thing? Yeah, this person's face is showing. And I'm not even sure if they responded beyond that. I'm not going to go too much into it, but I just wanted to show you that conversation to kind of show you it's good that people, like, the level of research and the level of, yeah, it's very high. So if you want to join the Discord, you will learn a lot, by the way. Let me just do a quick plug there.
A legacy of the near 800 years of Moorish domination in southern Europe, who, while conquerors in the south, lived alongside their European neighbours, integrating and travelling northward, or southwards as the ancient Egyptians would have viewed it, beyond the occupied territories. Marrying into Christianity, being baptised and adopting Moorish names, originally black families whose indigenous African genes have been absorbed into the white majority populace of Europe, whose white descendants
absorbed and or genocided, depending if they took the interbreeding or the wild men approach.
are still carrying them to this day. This hypothesis is ripe and ready for further research, hopefully to be carried out in full force, but for now one thing remains established fact, that the Moorish conquest of southern Europe had a revolutionary impact on European culture and society, carrying the legacy of North African high culture, itself a legacy of ancient Egypt's North African influence, and carrying those intellectual cultural traditions into Europe, creating a distinctly African culture in the civilization of the Moors, the eventual dissolution of which in the late 15th century fall of Moorish civilization likely spurred the European Renaissance that carried those intellectual traditions into the 21st century of our modern era. A dissolution of Moorish civilization as highlighted by Robin Walker by the likes of King Manuel of Portugal, who upon entering Granada alongside his wife Isabella as its new rulers at the twilight of the Moorish Empire, ordered the expulsion of its African population. The expulsions from both lands continued up until the time of King Philip III, who completed the policy in 1609. It is stated, wrote Professor Lane Poole, that no less than 3 million Moors were banished between the fall of Granada and the first decade of the 17th century. Some returned to North and West Africa, but others fled elsewhere in Europe, where they were gradually absorbed.
So just to be clear on that, remember what I was saying before. I think sometimes people get this really... people seem to dilute the impact of time and how it affects populations. And I speak about this quite a lot. So, for instance, like I said, there's a lot of people who are kind of like, oh, you know, we need to take Kemet back. I'm like, you need to just forget that line of thinking, okay? We need to figure out how we're going to claim, you know, how we're going to understand and teach African history correctly, and then allow some kind of discourse to improve the situation from where it is now. Because why do I say this? Because the point is, let's go back to 300 BC. Just bear with me before you kind of like switch off and get angry with what I'm saying. Let's go back to 300 BC. The Greeks settled in Egypt, okay? And I'm going to say Egypt deliberately now because at that point it wasn't Kemet, it was Egypt, okay? So the Greeks settled in Egypt, okay? They populated Alexandria, and they're there. 1 generation, they're Greek. 2 generations, they might still be Greek. 3 generations, forget about it. These people are Egyptians, okay? These people will classify themselves as Egyptians. They won't have any memory of being Greek, regardless of what their phenotype is. They will say, I'm here now, I'm Egyptian, I've been here for time, yeah? So by the time, what was it? I think it was 60 AD or something like that. 350 years pass. 350 years. Put that in perspective of what happens in 350 years, okay? That's before the start of quote unquote slavery, okay? This is a long, long time ago, okay? So go back 350 years, yeah? And then try and tell people, okay, the Romans have arrived. You Greeks, you don't belong here. And all the Greeks are supposed to have suddenly fled and went back to Greece. Like, oh yeah, hi guys, we're back. Been away for 350. They're Egyptian at that stage. There's no Greeks to send back. Maybe some new ones. Maybe there's a few Greek mercenaries, or they've got a Greek army stationed, and maybe the royal family. Maybe they're gonna get rid of the Ptolemies or something like that. But beyond that, all of those people who've been integrating for the past 300 years, they're going to be Greek. So I kind of want to throw that out there just to give you the idea, this idea of Moors being banished back to North Africa. Forget that myth, in my opinion, okay? First of all, you have to argue that they were from North Africa to begin with, and that's kind of something that I am not necessarily buying, okay? I made that very, very clear that I think they're just black Europeans who'd been there from day. But let's put that aside. Let's say they were from North Africa and they were part of the army that invaded in 700 AD. We're talking about 1492 AD now. 800 years later. Do you think these people classify themselves as North Africans anymore? Do you think they'll go, oh, well, our homeland, North Africa? No. That ship has sailed, okay? So these people are Europeans, okay? And they were either stayed and were absorbed or became Christians, okay? Or they were genocided. But this idea that they were pushed back into North Africa, that is a whole myth. Whole myth. There was nowhere to go, okay? When they were literally massacred in the Crusades, there was nowhere to go. They didn't go back to North Africa. There was no North Africa to go back to. That was not their nation. They weren't from there anymore. Okay, so it's just really important to kind of understand when we read things historically, it's really easy to kind of like dilute, but you have to put yourself in these situations and understand how things truly work. These people at this stage in life were black Europeans. That's what they were. They were black Europeans. There was no North Africa to go back to. So yeah, just thought I'd throw that out there. Let's let it play a bit.
Professor Lane Poole commented upon the sagaciousness of the expulsion policies. In 1492, the last bulwark of the Moors gave way before the crusade of Ferdinand and Isabella, and
at very most, the Africans would have given the Moors refuge, so to speak. They would have become refugees in Africa if they had opened their borders, if that was the case. That's the most that would have happened. But the idea that they kind of like just like tottered on back to where they came from, it's a myth that is kind of like perpetuated by this idea of the Reconquista that doesn't really exist.
With Granada fell Spain's greatness. For a brief while indeed, the reflection of the Moorish splendour cast a borrowed light upon the history of the land which it had warmed with its sunny radiance. The great epoch of Isabella, Charles V and Philip II, of Columbus, Cortes and Pizarro, shed a last halo about the dying moments of a mighty state. Then followed the abomination of desolation, the rule of the Inquisition, and the blackness of darkness in which Spain had been plunged ever since. In the land where science was once supreme, the Spanish doctors became noted for nothing but their ignorance and incapacity, and the discoveries of Newton and Harvey were condemned as pernicious to the faith. Where once sedentary public libraries had fed the minds of scholars, and 500,000 books had been gathered together at Cordova for the benefit of the world, such indifference to learning afterwards prevailed. The new capital, Madrid, possessed no public library in the 18th century, and even the manuscripts of the Escurial were denied in our own days, 1886, to the first scholarly historian of the Moors, though himself a Spaniard. The 16,000 looms of Seville soon dwindled to a fifth of their ancient number. The arts and the industries of Toledo and Almeria faded into insignificance. Their very baths, public buildings of equal ornament and use, were destroyed because their cleanliness savoured too strongly of rank infidelity. The land, deprived of the skillful irrigation of the Moors.
Alright, so actually on that note there, I'm gonna do a little bit of a side kind of like side note, because I'm gonna throw something your way that's gonna throw you trippy. Okay, I was actually speaking to my brother about this, so if he's on the live stream, I'm not sure if he is, this comes from him. Let me throw something your way, because this is gonna really throw you through a loop, guys. So this is a new one, by the way. Like, this is brand new, hot off the press stuff. So on my community post in YouTube, I shared with you this image. Where is it? Oh, where's it gone? Okay, I think I'm gonna have to Google it quickly. Bear with me, guys. This will take just a second. Okay. Hope I can find it. I thought I saved it, you know. Oh no, I did save it. Sorry, I found it. I can see it. It's really annoying. Here it is. All right, bear with me, guys. This is gonna be good. All right, so I shared with you this image, okay, and this image blew my mind honestly when I saw it. And I'm not gonna ask you what it is, because I've already asked you that on the live stream. Some of you will know already. Sorry, on the community. Some of you will know already. This is an image of Crystal Palace, which is in London, by the way. Okay, so Crystal Palace is in South London, and this is an image of Crystal Palace, which, by the way, is a little bit of a shit hole now. Okay, and this is literally a palace that was made of crystals, a gigantic glass building, and inside it you have this life-sized sculptures of Ramesses in their true tone, by the way, not in that fake Hollywood tone, or not in that fake red color. This is, you can even see in this black and white image, this is a dark tone. So I'm going to assume this is a dark brown. This is Ramesses displayed in their proper color, okay, in the Crystal Palace. Now, I want you to take note of the architecture, because the first thing that struck out to me is that looks like Moorish architecture. Now, this might sound a bit crazy to you. Now, without going on too long, this doesn't exist anymore. This entire Crystal Palace has been absolutely destroyed. So the area is still called Crystal Palace, but no one knows why it's called Crystal Palace. It's called Crystal Palace because it used to be home to a gigantic Crystal Palace. That's why the area is called Crystal Palace. But now it's just called Crystal Palace, and you get there and you're like, why the hell is this place called Crystal Palace? This place looks like it should be called the Hood. Yeah, so anyway, the point being that this doesn't exist anymore. It's been entirely destroyed. And before you go, oh, well, that's no big deal, you know, World Fair, you know, they made this stuff and then destroyed it. By the way, does this look like a temporary structure to you? That No, this is a massive thing that was developed by very advanced people. Now, why am I bringing that up? Let me bring up another image to you. And this one, I will ask you a question, okay? Because I asked my community this question, and a few people got it. So I'm going to ask you another one, okay? You've looked at that one. Can someone tell me, where is this? Where in the world is this? I'm going to wait for you to answer, because this is a real place, by the way. I want you to answer to me, where in the world is this? And I'm going to wait for you guys. I'm going to actually post some more images whilst this one's on the screen. And I'm going to ask you guys, because this is all the same place. Here's another one of the same place. Zoom in. Where in the world is this, guys? Someone said Buckingham Palace. Someone said Italy. Wrong. Keep them coming. Where in the world is this? I've just shown you two rather beautiful images. England, correct. That's very broad. Jonathan Waters, thank you very much for the donation. He said Chicago. No, good guess though, Mackenzie. RJ Mackenzie. Jonathan said keep up the good work. Thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate you, and I appreciate your donation. Where in the world is this? I'm sharing this with you because me and my brother have been absolutely, well, not livid, just kind of like, what the all right, so I'm going to start giving you some answers now, okay? Because I don't think anyone's going to guess it. Kapruki said Lagos. You know what? I've got something coming for you there, Kapruki. Watch this. All right, so this is White City. Now, if you're not from England, that's going to mean absolutely nothing to you. But I actually was born in Hammersmith and raised in White City. So I'm from White City. White City is a complete and utter shithole. Okay, I've got nothing nice to say about White City. Anyone from London knows White City is a dire area. Okay, it's a bit improved a bit because they put a nice massive shopping centre in there recently. But this is in an area called Shepherd's Bush and White City. Now, when we saw this image, I'm not gonna lie, I fell off my chair. I was like, what the that is not White City. And I kept my bro sent it to me, and I fell off my chair. Let me show you another image if that one doesn't. Oh yeah, let me do the big screen. You're right, sorry, I'm gonna do the big screen because you lot don't need to see me. That's a good point. This one? Yeah. So let me go back and just quickly show you. This is White City, yeah? White City. And if that's not enough for you, this is White City as well. And this is just some food for thought as we kind of close out today. This is White City. This is White City. Yeah? Yetunde? This is what White City used to look like. Rivers running through the middle of the city. And this is not some small business, okay? This goes on as far as the eye can see. Let me just pull up this image for you so you can really start to get an idea of scale. This is 1,400 acres, okay? This is basically White City, this city of white buildings, of advanced architecture, ran the entirety of Shepherd's Bush and White City, and you should know how big those two areas are. Massive buildings, marble. Now, this is where, and these aren't fake, these are photos. What am I getting on? Where am I getting at here? Well, let me tell you a little bit of where I'm getting at. You gotta know where I'm getting at before when I show you this last image. Okay. So we're talking about square miles of insane architecture. This is White City. Okay. So all of these images I show you, this is White City. And those of you who grew up there, like me and Yetunde in the chat, yeah, you know why we're shocked. Because everything in these images, we're talking about miles and miles, square miles of limestone architecture no longer exists. But I want to look at this image, and I want you to look at the style of architecture, because someone tell me what style of architecture this is. This is the question now I'm going to ask you. What style of architecture is it being employed here? Someone said Tartaria. I'll kind of take that, but I don't know enough about Tartaria. I'm looking for close up. Yep, Moors. This is Moorish architecture, people. This is Moorish architecture. You can see this is Moorish architecture. Okay? This is Moorish architecture. Loads of people coming in the chat saying the same thing. Let me show you for comparison. Okay? Because there's not many Moorish structures remaining. But this is Moorish palace in Andalusia. Okay? This is the kind of thing that you'll see in Marrakesh as well. That kind of dates around the same time. So you'll see it in Morocco as well. This is clearly Moorish architecture. And because of that, they completely demolished White City. It's gone. And the excuse they make is that, oh, it was part of some random exhibition that we did, the World Fairs exhibition. And then when we built it, I'm sorry, we've got this saying in in the UK where we say, am I a P-R-I-C-K? I'm not going to say the word, but we got a saying called that in the UK. And that's basically saying, am I an idiot? Don't disrespect me by saying such stupid things. Like, no one is building this. Let me just quickly pull up this image. No one is building this. Where's it gone? Here it is. No one is building this. No, that's not the one I want to show you. Let me move forward twice. Just want you to see the scale of this. Not that one. Here. No one is building this as part of an exhibition. Okay? No one is. This is what you call centuries of architecture. Can you see the scale of this, guys? Can you see the scale of it? It goes on as far as the eye can see. And the claim is, oh, we built this all in 2 years as part of an exhibition. Am I I'm not going to say it, but I want to say it. Please do not disrespect. This is something that took probably hundreds of years to build, which was built out gradually over hundreds of years. This White City no longer looks like this, people, as you can imagine. Okay, I'm not just saying this for the sake of this. White City looks nothing like this now. They blew this whole place up with dynamite. It doesn't exist. All of these buildings were blown up. Now, why did I raise all of that? The point being is that the erasure of Moorish contribution is very real, but also those photos which were taken in the 1900s are very recent. So it's just like, that blew my mind. This wasn't even supposed to be part of this presentation. This was just something that my brother sent to me on a random, and I was like, oh my God. Like, if people see these images and if you want to buy the narrative that they built £1 trillion, because that's literally what I could see in that area. They built £1 trillion worth of property over 6 months just so they could demolish it after an exhibition was done. That's fine. Absolutely believe it. I have a house for sale in Antarctica, okay, going for a very cheap £4 million. I'll give you my bank details to wire it across, yeah? But if you've got common sense and you saw those images and you said, this is what you call not just years, this is centuries of investment, contribution and building that has created this, and people have callously gone in there and within a matter of years they have blown it all up, and people don't even understand why the area is called White City. If you're on that level and you understand what you're looking at, then it should make you furious. Really, it should make you furious. Who would have thought that happened just before the First World War? Who would have thought that happened that close to our lifetime, that they could destroy an entire area? An entire area. the mind boggles. It looks like heaven. But anyway, just to show you, so the erasure of Moors and the Moorish contribution is very, very prominent and very present and very recent. Okay, very, very recent.
Grew impoverished and neglected. The richest and most fertile valleys languished and grew deserted.
Sorry, and that wasn't just it. Let me give you something else. Sorry if I haven't distressed you enough with that one. Let me throw something else your way. Okay, so in reading up about that, which I obviously had to do, it talks about, it's called the Franco-British exhibition if you want to read up about it, and obviously it's got nothing to do with the exhibition. That was just the excuse to demolish it after the camera was invented. But what was really interesting was, let me share something with you. I need to share this with you. No, where is it? Please let me have it open. Where is it? It's one of these windows. Is that it? No. Okay, maybe I've got a link to it. Bear with me, guys, because this is just worthwhile to see. I know we've gone on for a bit on the side. Actually, whilst I'm looking for that, Tracy, thank you so much for your donation. Appreciate you so much. He says, TKM, I truly appreciate what you bring to our platform. I always look forward to brilliant content. Keep bringing true history, not the fake that others have been lying about for hundreds of years. Thank you. It's absolutely my pleasure, and that very generous $50 donation is really appreciated. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it, and thank you, Tracy, for that. So let me just quickly, if I can, find that link. Where have I saved it? This is really annoying. I thought I had it here. Is this it here? No, this is not it. No, that's not it. Oh, this is so annoying. I think I forgot to save the link. I don't want to search for it when I'm live. If you search the Franco-British exhibition, in fact, you know what, I have to show you guys. You just have to bear with me as I find this. 1 second. Franco-British exhibition. Okay, so let me find the article that I want to show you, because this is gonna. Oh yes, I want to show you the Senegalese. Here we go. Senegalese. The Senegalese something. I'm just gonna type in Senegalese because that should give me what I'm looking for. Senegalese village. That was it. So check this out, guys. Okay. So what I'm about to show you guys, check this out. All right. So they claimed that this, but when I saw this image, I was instantly like, wait a second, this is not White City. This is, and they say, oh well, the exhibition had two parts. It had the Senegalese village and it had this other village. Yeah. And then they showed you the Senegalese village, and I looked at that and I was like, that was not a part of the village. And if you actually look in, let me just quickly open up this site quickly. This is gonna, you have to once again get past it. So they try and say that this was a part of the White City exhibition, that they just decided to build a village that looked exactly like Senegal. Yeah. They decided to build this village that looked exactly like Senegal in the middle of the Franco exhibition. But then I looked at this thing, yeah, I was like, that's not White City. This is not the same image or the same place. So what are our possibilities there? Yeah, if this is not a part of the White City exhibition, then this probably is an image of Senegal. So this building, this architecture that you're seeing here probably existed in Senegal. Probably a part, once again, of the Moorish empire that they're trying to hide. I wish, once again, I want to find the page, because there's a page that actually had more images. Because there's one that will just, you'll laugh at, and you're like, once again, you'll say, am I a... This is it here. So this image apparently was a part of the White City exhibition. Apparently they shipped over some Senegalese people, whole families, yeah, straw and everything. Sorry. Sometimes you just have to laugh at the audacity of their lies. The temerity is sensational. Honestly, they're so creative. So apparently they shipped over these Senegalese people, whole families. So there you lot, as part of our exhibition, we need you to dress up as Senegalese people, yeah, and rebuild your straw thing in here and bring dirt. They brought dirt as well. That's how generous they were. They thought we need this to be really authentic. They even brought Senegalese dirt and shipped it over. I weren't born yesterday. And they did all that to justify the fact that they have images of grand buildings like this in Senegal. Rather than just come out and say, this is a photograph of a grand building in Senegal, a Moroccan or a Moorish, sorry, not Moroccan, a Moorish building in Senegal built by the Moors, built by the Senegalese Moors, because that would have been a part of the Moorish Empire, Senegal. Rather than say that, they'll say, oh no, this was a part of the Franco-London exhibition. This was a part of it, you know, we just shipped the dirt over. And so this is double whammy of dishonesty. Not only have we completely destroyed a white city built by the Moorish Empire over hundreds of years of occupation, probably in London, that you've never read about, by the way, because I remember reading about London, yeah, in school. No one mentioned the White City exhibition, and I saw the images of London, and London, for all intents and purposes, from the drawings that I saw, remained a complete and utter shithole, and people were throwing shit out of the window, and it had sewers running through the middle of the street. No one showed me anything that looked anything like White City. But then on the other side as well, they told you, well, Africa didn't have any great buildings. I've read to you already the fact that if you read the writings, they said that the Palace of the Oba in Benin was crafted out of more material than was used in the Great Pyramid of Giza. The Palace of the Oba was humongous, and they absolutely destroyed it, just like they've destroyed this building in Senegal and any other buildings like it. If they can so callously completely destroy an entire city so that you didn't even know it existed, so that me and other residents, people who have lived in White City, had no idea that it used to be literally heaven on earth. No idea. They completely demolished it. If they can do that, what do you think they've done in places like Africa, where you had inconvenient buildings and stuff like that, that proved that these people had civilizations? Just a bit of food for thought there. Anyway, I'm going to let the video play out now because we are at the end and it's getting a little late. So I'm going to let it finish playing out at this stage.
Most of the populous cities, which filled every district of Andalusia, fell into ruinous decay, and beggars, friars and bandits took the place of scholars, merchants and knights. So low fell Spain after she had driven away the Moors. Such is the melancholy contrast offered by her history. Commenting on this passage, rigorous scholar Professor Maulana Karenga leaves us with a final word. It's interesting to note that after all the commentaries on and claims about the tragedy that would descend on Africans if and when Europeans left Africa, it was a major European state, Spain, that deteriorated after the Africans left. Such is the irony and severe instruction of history. And as a bookend to this saga on the Moors in Europe, we're left to ask one final question. Just because we find black people in coats of arms, and know that African Muslims ruled and integrated into Europe between the 8th and 13th centuries and beyond, does that necessarily mean that all the black people in those coats of arms are integrated Muslim Moors?
That's a very poignant question to leave us with, okay? Once again, what we've already kind of answered it somewhat during the live stream. Are they Moors to begin? So are they Muslims? Were they people who came over from North Africa? My gut feeling and my research and everything leads me to the fact that no, many of them were there already. And especially since we know they created the Reconquista in the 19th century, then why would we consider otherwise? Why are we just going to believe that they forgot to mention that in all the history that preceded the 19th century? So that's the end of our 2-part The Truth About the Moors of Europe. Now obviously we're going to have concluding or subsequent episodes to this, but they won't be based on Kapruki's 2-part series, which truly is excellent. I cannot rate him enough, because like I've said to you guys so many times, me doing this subject was a massive headache for me. It's something that I knew I wanted to do, but I didn't know how to dive in and start. And him producing such an excellent 2-part series just gave me an opportunity it really catalyzed me really to now to be able to dive into this subject. And I know it's a troubling subject, and I know that people mentally, a lot of people aren't going to be ready for it. They're going to be in a place where they're like, I don't know, bro, it's like much, we're all black Europeans. But you can see the receipts that he's brought there, and hopefully you can see some of the receipts that I'm showing you as well. No one's making large outlandish claims that don't have any basis, and we're just saying them. Everything is, here's a piece of evidence that is compelling. Wouldn't it make more sense if it was this rather than this? And a lot of the time it takes black historians, it takes, I don't want to use the word Afrocentric because we're in Europe now, so it's not even, doesn't even really apply, although it would apply if we were talking about ancient Kemet. But it takes, a lot of the time it takes melanated scholars to use Occam's razor. We really do take an Occam's razor approach. We say the most logical thing here, if this guy is flying the banner of this family and blah blah blah, then he's probably a member of this family, and probably not. They'll go reaching, coming up with all this. Oh no, we don't have any inscription, but it's probably a depiction of a saint that died 700 years ago, 800 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago. That's what you call reaching. We're using Occam's razor. So I hope you agree, and I hope you've enjoyed the live stream. It's 12:15 now in the UK, and I think that's late enough for me. So I want to thank everybody who's joined me on the live stream. I hope you've all had a fantastic time. Aket of Amenheru, my fantastic moderators, Kapruki, I think it was just the two of you guys moderating today. You've done a fantastic job. Thank you so much. My very generous donations, all of you who's donated today. I think I caught all of you. If I missed anyone, let me know, guys, in the chat. But I think I caught everyone. Thank you so much if you made a donation. I really appreciate you. And just everyone who's joined. Once again, we've managed to sustain a following of around 400 for the entirety of this stream. I think that's pretty good. So yeah, you guys made this worthwhile. Otherwise, I promise you, otherwise I probably wouldn't feel so driven to do these live streams if you guys weren't there. And 2 more fantastic donations have come in, so I have to say thank you before I go. Deshaun Willingham, thank you so much. He said keep doing the work, we'll keep supporting. Thank you. I appreciate you, and I appreciate that very generous donation, and that came through almost instantaneously. Yes, Stephen has also sent me a donation. Stephen Carter, $30. I appreciate you. Said thank you. My IQ goes up every live stream. I appreciate that, man. I've had such a good time. I promise you, I've had such a good time. Honestly, it's a pleasure being online with you. I know I didn't get to read through all of the comments, or read them out at least, but as you can imagine, we go 2.5 hours, and I thought that was even quite a fast pace because we let it play quite a bit. So if I was reading out comments as well, we wouldn't get that far. But I appreciate everybody who's on the live stream, and I am reading them, even if I'm not reading them out loud. I'm often reading them as I'm kind of formulating the things I'm gonna say. So yeah, keep doing it, guys. I've appreciated everyone on this live stream. I've had a great time. We've touched the Moors, and I think we'll carry on. I've got things in the offing at the moment that are gonna be released. So yeah, stay tuned. Thank you again. Thank you for the donations. Thank you for joining me today. And on that note, I'm going to say good night. God bless. Have a fantastic evening, night, and I'll see you very, very soon. Thanks, guys.